Chapter 1474 Zhao Yue's call for help wife-to-be? Zhong Zhouxiao was stunned. Given the widespread fame of the little princess of the Luo clan, Zhong Zhouxiao had naturally heard of her. He also knew that the little princess was engaged to the young prodigy of the Zhong clan, but who would have thought that his teacher was the man who stood between the both of them? This explained why the little princess would say that there was someone whom she fancied. No wonder his teacher would go around tearing down everything in the Zhong clan. In fact, thinking back, his teacher had pummeled him the first time that they met. In the end, this was the actual reason behind everything. Teacher, rest assured. Now that I know the little princess of the Luo clan is your wife-to-be, I won't overstep my boundaries even if I'm beaten to death. Zhong Zhouxiao hurriedly clasped his fist. A teacher for a day, a father for life. Since his teacher was equivalent to his father, his teacher's wife-to-be would be his future mother. Even if someone inflated his guts to 10 times the size, he would never dare to marry his mother. Good. Just keep that in mind. Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Knowing that he could not remain like that, despite the giddiness he felt, Zhong Xian still wobbled up to his feet. All of a sudden, he sensed something and swiftly flicked his wrist, and a token appeared in his palm. The Sanctum Head Token. In this moment, the token was emanating a faint light, as if something had brought it to life. He had encountered this situation once in the past, and that was when he had successfully become an 8-star master teacher and deciphered the first seal on the token. Could it be that the second seal had been removed? Zhong Xian swiftly took a closer look at the Sanctum Head Token, and he could vaguely sense a powerful aura leaking from it. There are 3 conditions that have to be met in order to awaken the Sanctum Head Token. Firstly, becoming an 8-star master teacher. Secondly, achieving the cultivation of Saint 8 Dan. Zhong Xian nodded in realization. While I have yet to fully made a breakthrough to Saint 8 Dan, in terms of fighting prowess and comprehension of spatial laws, even a true Saint 8 Dan expert would be no match for me. Perhaps this has led the Sanctum Head Token to conclude that I have cleared the second condition, thus deciphering the second seal. While the requirements to unsealing the Sanctum Head Token appeared to be fixed, it still depended on the exact conditions that Sage Kuei had imposed on the Sanctum Head Token to gauge if those requirements had been met. Perhaps, the token gauged whether an individual had reached Saint 8 Dan by measuring their zhenqi. If that was the case, it would not be too surprising for the token to decide that Zhong Xian had reached Saint 8 Dan. After all, he was a cultivator of the Heaven's Path divine art, which put him far in front of his peers. Let me see what is beneath the second seal. The deciphering of the first seal had turned the token into a powerful weapon and granted him greater control over it. Given so, the deciphering of the second seal should have some kind of reward as well. Thus, Zhong Xian immersed his consciousness into the seal, and a few lines of information swiftly surfaced in his mind. Zhong Xian had thought that the deciphering of the second seal would turn the Sanctum Head Token into an even more powerful weapon that would help him out of his current situation, but that was not the case. What was hidden beneath the second seal was a teleportation formation that brought one into a hidden dimension left behind by the founder of the Sanctum of Sages. Contained in it was the heritage of the divine eyes of the 9th Netherworld and the insights regarding it left behind by the predecessors. This was indeed great for deciphering the third seal, but to the current him, it was not of much use at all. What he needed right now was the strength to go against the First Elder. He had to resolve the issue with the Zhong clan once and for all, or else given the influence that the Zhong clan wielded in the master-teacher continent, even if he escaped for the moment, he would not be able to escape forever. Furthermore, there was no saying that the Zhong clan might even use his students as hostages against him. Not to mention, this teleportation formation was an only one-time use. Once he activated it, it would lose its effectiveness. So, he should at least prepare himself before heading over and aim to master the divine eyes of the 9th Netherworld in a single push. More importantly, he was in no state to cultivate. The giddiness that he was experiencing from the incompatibility between his primordial spirit and his body made even standing up difficult for him, let alone practicing a profound optic art. Boom boom boom. While Zhong Xian was deep in thought, sonic booms in the air abruptly drew his attention back to reality. Lifting his gaze, he saw the netherworld azure dragon beast and the inferno Cheline being forcefully knocked back. In their clashes with the first elder, the both of them had sustained significant injuries. As powerful as the two saint beasts were, they still came nowhere close to matching up to the first elder of the Zhong clan. If not for the latter being constantly struck by lightning, they would have long fallen in defeat. Zhong Xian took a look at the storm clouds above and shook his head. The lightning bolts won't last for too long either. The continued release of lightning bolts had almost completely depleted the lightning tribulation, and its might was already beginning to wane. From the looks of it, it would only be able to deal a couple more lightning bolts before dissipating for good. Xiong xiong. At this moment, the Inferno Cheline finally released its trump card. Tapping into the very last hue of Cheline flames that it harnessed, it shot several searing flame dragons toward the first elder simultaneously. The scorching heat of the attack swiftly charred the ground black and dyed the sky crimson. At the same time, the netherworld azure dragon beast made use of this opportunity to sneak behind the first elder to launch a secret assault. The collaboration between the two beasts would leave even a real 9-star master teacher in a fluster, but the first elder did not show a hint of panic. He calmly sealed the space behind him before dispelling the flames before him with several palm strikes, thus neutralizing their assault with ease. As the lightning tribulation grew smaller and smaller, the strength that the first elder could exert became greater and greater. Previously, the netherworld azure dragon beast and the inferno Cheline had still been able to stand on equal grounds with the first elder, but it was clear that the tables were swiftly tilting in the first elder's favor. "Master, we aren't a match for him. You have to quickly find a way to leave this area," the inferno Cheline urged Zhong Xian anxiously through their telepathic link. Zhong Xian nodded. While this was the first time that he had encountered a battle of this caliber, he was still able to tell that it was only a matter of time before his two tamed beasts fall in defeat, and there was no doubt that the first elder would reap his life the moment that happened. "I have to leave right now," Zhong Xian muttered as he leaped into the sky and flew in the opposite direction. However, before he could get far, he suddenly wobbled in the middle of his flight before crashing back down to the ground. "Teacher!" Zhong Zhouxiao hurriedly rushed forward to support Zhong Xian. "I'm fine," Zhong Xian said as he rubbed his head. It seemed like he would not be able to leave until he resolved the problem concerning the incompatibility in his primordial spirit and physical body. Suppressing the giddiness in his head, he looked up and saw that the first elder was closer to him than before. The storm clouds in the sky had already depleted all their energy and were beginning to dissipate. Scram! Without the lightning tribulation to keep him in check, the first elder roared furiously as he decisively released two palm strikes with his full force harnessed in them. Boom! Boom! The overpowering palm strike struck the netherworld azure dragon beast and inferno Cheline into two separate rubble piles. The impact of the attack caused all of the injuries that they had sustained throughout the battle to relapse all at once, and they swiftly lost their consciousness. After knocking out the two beasts, the first elder turned his menacing gaze toward Zhong Xian. Recalling the humiliation that he had sustained within this short period of time, a cold sneer crept onto his lips as he uttered, "Zhong Xian, it's time for you to meet your maker." The first elder tapped his finger, and a surge of sword chi tore its way toward Zhong Xian. Wang! Before it could strike Zhong Xian, a token abruptly appeared in the midst of the sword chi's path, neutralizing it entirely as if a barrier. Zhong Xian knew that he would not be able to withstand the first elder's attack in his current state, so he decisively threw the Sanctum Head token out. "First elder of the Zhong clan, I, Zhong Xian, am an 8-star master teacher recognized by the Master Teacher Pavilion. Even if I have erred, you should seek recompense through reporting me to the Master Teacher Pavilion. You should be well aware that only the Master Teacher Pavilion is qualified to pass judgment on master teachers. Are you planning on turning a blind eye to the rules of the Master Teacher Pavilion?" Zhong Xian bellowed imposingly. "Master Teacher? You actually have the cheek to call yourself a Master Teacher?" Those words reignited the first elder's rage once more. How could a person who practiced the unorthodox arts of the Soul Oracle have the cheek to proclaim himself as a Master Teacher? Definitely, he would report this matter to the Master Teacher Pavilion and have them thoroughly investigate the matter, but before that, he would first have this young man killed in order to quell the burning rage in his heart. Die, the first elder bellowed as he crushed his palm down upon Zhongxian. Who? The palm strike first collided with the sanctum head token, and unable to withstand the might of the palm strike, it was knocked right back into Zhongxian's hands. Following which, the first elder firmly pushed on with his palm strike, as if he would not rest until he finally reduced Zhongxian into meat paste. You! Zhongxian panicked. His words had not worked. It was clear that the first elder would not rest until he was dead. At the same time, the intolerable giddiness consuming his mind rendered him completely incapable of fight and flight. In this desperate moment, he flicked his finger. Boom! A massive head materialized right before him, crushing heavily down on the first elder. While the actual fighting prowess of Vicious Head could not even compare to a Saint 8 Dan expert, its sudden appearance and its sheer weight, coupled with the exhaustion and injuries that the first elder had accumulated from dealing with the lightning tribulation and Zhongxian's 2 tamed beasts, actually managed to catch the first elder off guard and suppress him temporarily. Teacher! Upon seeing the head that his teacher had brought out, Zhong Zhouxiao widened his eyes in absolute horror. He anxiously turned his gaze toward Zhongxian, only to see the latter abruptly flicking his wrist to whip out a jade token. It was a communication jade token with particularly intricate inscriptions on it. It was shimmering with a light glow, as if some kind of important information was being transmitted. Zhongxian tapped his finger lightly on it. Wang. An indistinct face appeared on the surface of communication jade token. Despite the blurriness of the image, one could still tell that the other party was an indescribably beautiful young lady. Zhong Zhouxiao was captivated by the face for a short moment before coming to a delayed realization that the other party was his first senior, Zhao Ya. While he had not seen Zhao Ya in person before, he had heard much about her beauty. In this very moment, Zhao Ya's face was colored in distress, and with a deeply frightened voice, she exclaimed, "Teacher, save me." Poof! The image abruptly vanished from view, and following right after, the communication jade token shattered with a light explosion. This saying means that even if a person only serves as your teacher for a day, it's only right to respect him just like how you respect your father for life. Chapter 1475 Pursuing Zhongxian Zhao Ya. Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly as a violent aura quietly leaked out from his presence. Under normal circumstances, due to the incredible distance, it should have been impossible for his communication jade token to receive Zhao Ya's message. Most likely, the message had come from Chen Liao instead. She had probably received Zhao Ya's call for help and used a special method to store her message and forward it to him. However, at the same time, the burden on the communication jade token was likely so great that it ended up shattering. Just what in the world had happened for her to send such a message to him? Was she not the celebrated young court chief of the Glacier Plain Court? Could this mean that something had happened to the Glacier Plain Court? Teacher, Zhong Zhouxiao said anxiously. Something has happened to your first senior. I'm going to save her, Zhongxian said with narrowed eyes. At that moment, his back suddenly straightened up as if a taut pillar that would shoulder even the weight of the world fearlessly. He did not know what had happened to Zhao Ya, but as her teacher, he would protect her even if he had to venture up a mountain of blades and descend into a sea of flames to do so. But, how are you going to save her? Zhong Zhouxiao asked worriedly. He knew that this first senior of his was the young court chief of the Glacier Plain Court, and in terms of fighting prowess, she was likely to above him and his teacher. Given so, would his teacher really be of much help there? To make matters worse, the other party had only said 3 words, "Save me, teacher," so they had no idea what had happened at all, let alone prepare for a rescue operation. No matter what, as a teacher, I won't allow the slightest harm to come to my direct disciples. This doesn't just apply to her but you as well. This is my promise to all of you, Zhongxian said. Following which, he flicked his wrist and took out his sanctum head token. I thought that this one-time teleportation wouldn't be of much use, but it has really come at a timely moment, Zhongxian thought. When he deciphered the second seal on the sanctum sage token, he had found a teleportation token that would transport him to a hidden dimension in the sanctum of sages. Initially, he had thought that it was of little use in his current situation, but from the looks of it now, it was just what he needed. In order to find out the full story, he would have to first return to the Sanctum of Sages to figure out what had happened, but even if he rode on the Inferno Cheline, it would still take him at least half a month to return to the Sanctum of Sages. Considering the danger that Zhao Yue was in, he could not afford to waste that much time. However, it would be different with this teleportation formation. He would be able to return to the Sanctum of Sages instantaneously without wasting any time. Zhou, I'll be leaving first. Tell Jian Qinsheng that I'm sorry that I failed to accomplish what I promised him. If I have a chance in the future, I'll make sure to teach that Xing Sword Saint a lesson in his stead, Zhongxian said as he gripped the Sanctum head token in his hand tightly. Jian Qinsheng had brought him here in the hope that he would defeat the Zhong clan's swordsmanship in his stead and bring honor back to him. While he did manage to defeat Zhong Shu and the others, he did not manage to compete with the head of the Zhong clan in a duel, so strictly speaking, he had not fully completed the task that he had set out to achieve. However, the matter with Zhao Yue was much more important than anything else. He had no choice but to abandon everything else. Yes, teacher. Zhong Zhouxiao hurriedly nodded. Suppressing the giddiness in his head, Zhongxian swiftly infused his zhenqi into the Sanctum head token, and in the blink of an eye, the teleportation formation on it was activated. Wang. A brilliant burst of light swiftly swallowed Zhongxian whole. Inferno Cheline, Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, vicious, we're leaving, Zhongxian yelled as he waved his hand. Kuala. The two saint beasts and vicious immediately disappeared from the spot. Following which, Zhongxian's silhouette swiftly turned incorporeal as well before vanishing without a trace. An otherworldly demon. He's an otherworldly demon. Damn it. Right after Zhongxian disappeared from the spot, the first elder emerged from the pit that he had been crushed in and howled frenziedly. Even though he had no idea what exactly the giant head crushing down on him was, he could still clearly feel the aura and bloodline of an otherworldly demon emperor from it. In other words, not only was Zhongxian a soul oracle, he was also allied with the otherworldly demonic tribe, or perhaps, he might even be an otherworldly demon himself. For an otherworldly demon to disguise as a master teacher, the only ones who were capable of this feat were the otherworldly demon emperors. The truth could not have been any clearer now. Zhongxian was definitely an otherworldly demon emperor in disguise. This would also explain why he was so bent on destroying the Zhong clan. Given the grudge between mankind and the otherworldly demonic tribe, it was no wonder Zhongxian would desire to destroy the number one sage clan. As soon as the first elder rose from the ground, he immediately extended his spiritual perception to the surroundings in order to find Zhongxian. However, no matter how he looked, there was not the slightest trace of the young man to be found. Where is he? The first elder turned a hostile gaze toward Zhong Zhouxiao, his voice dripping with killing intent. He had seen how close Zhong Zhouxiao was with Zhongxian with his own eyes. Zhongshe has used a teleportation formation to leave this area. Zhong Zhouxiao replied with a slightly dazed look on his face, as if he was still trying to make sense out of what had happened. That's impossible. The first elder exclaimed with bloodshot eyes. Teleportation formations can only be set up by Saint Nine Dan cultivators, not to mention that a heavy price has to be paid with each activation. Not even the Zhong clan has the resources to use it lightly, so how could that fellow possibly be able to teleport away? Teleportation formations involved the warping of space to swiftly transport an individual from one end to the other. While 9-star formation masters were able to set up teleportation formations, such extreme warping of space was not easy to pull off and required a heavy price to be paid in order to accomplish it. Even as the number one sage clan on the master-teacher continent, they could not afford to use it lightly. Otherwise, their clan head would not have left on a saint beast earlier. Thus, how could that fellow manage to leave on a teleportation formation? Zhong Wuchen flew over and said, it was really a teleportation formation. I saw the disturbances in space with my own eyes. He had sustained severe injuries from the lightning bolt earlier, but after some recuperation, he had managed to recover sufficiently to move around. Nevertheless, given the tattered condition that he was in, it would take at least half a month of recuperation in order for him to return to his peak state. Hearing Zhong Wuchen's words, the first elder swiftly scanned the surroundings once more and noted that Zhongxian's aura had indeed disappeared without leaving a trail. Gritting his teeth, he spat hoarsely. To possess such a powerful formation despite his young age and low cultivation realm, there's no doubt that he's an otherworldly demon emperor. If he still had not been too sure previously, this was more than sufficient evidence to prove his hypothesis. Despite being in his early 20s, he possessed strength far superior to those of his peers, wielded the means of soul oracles, was capable of utilizing otherworldly demons' means, and now, it had been found that he even had a priceless teleportation formation on him. This showed that not only was he an otherworldly demon emperor, he was a rather high-ranked one too. It was ridiculous that Yang Shi would take in an otherworldly demon emperor as his student. I, Zhong Wuheng, in my capacity as the first elder of the Zhong clan, command all Zhong clan members and subordinate powers to devote all resources to pursuing Zhong Xian. Regardless of the means they use, they are to kill him on the spot so as to safeguard the security of the master-teacher continent, the first elder bellowed. Wang. As those words were spoken, a token flew into the air. It emanated a light glow that swiftly shrouded the entire city. In an instant, every member of the Zhong clan received the first elder's orders. A decree from the first elder was only second to the clan head's decree. Once issued, all clan members were to obey it without any questions. Devote all resources into pursuing Zhong Xian? While everyone was still bewildered by the command, the furious voice of a lady suddenly boomed across the air. Zhong Wuheng, you brazen skunk. Chapter 1476 Yang Shi is out of seclusion, Hong Long. Shortly after those words were spoken, the crowd suddenly felt a heavy pressure from the sky pushing down on them. Following which, a middle-aged lady flew straight over with a sword in hand. Before she even arrived, the crowd could already feel the sharpness of her sword chi. It felt almost as if their flesh was being torn to shreds. The first elder felt his goosebumps rising, and he hurriedly clasped his fist. Meng Sword Saint. But before he could finish speaking, the sharp glint of a sword was already flying straight toward him. Peng. The first elder was immediately sent flying before tumbling along the ground. At the same time, a blooded wound appeared on his chest. You. Not expecting the Meng Sword Saint to make a move on him without any hesitation right after returning, the first elder was so furious that he nearly exploded on the spot. He struggled to his feet agitatedly, and flicking his wrist, he whipped out a sword before charging right at the Meng Sword Saint. Zhong Wuheng, are you challenging me to a fight? It has just been a few days since we last met, but it seems like your guts have grown quite a bit. The Meng Sword Saint harumphed coldly as she gracefully flicked the sword in her hand. Tzzzzzzzz. The next instant, the first elder suddenly found himself turning uncontrollably on the spot, as if he was trapped in a vortex. Sword punctures swiftly appeared all over his body, and crimson blood spurted from each of those punctures. The first elder was one of the top experts on the master-teacher continent, but he was still rendered completely helpless against the Meng Sword Saint's swordsmanship. Peng. The next instant, the first elder found himself crashing into a heap of rubble, and he coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. After all he had gone through earlier, he was already severely injured. Thus, when the Meng Sword Saint launched an assault on him, he felt his entire body going entirely limp, devoid of the slightest strength. Cough cough. Awkward coughing echoed across the air, and a middle-aged man descended from the sky. My wife, why don't you listen to the first elder's words first? Clan head. Upon seeing the middle-aged man, the elders in the area hurriedly clasped their fists and bowed deeply. The head of the Zhong clan, the father of the famed young prodigy, the Xing Sword Saint. Upon learning that Zhong Xian was currently in the Zhong clan, they had rushed back as fast as they could, so they had been able to return within a relatively short period of time. However, it seemed like they were still too late. Listen to his words. What else is there to listen to? Didn't you hear the decree he made earlier? The Meng Sword Saint bellowed with a dark look on her face. It's precisely because I heard it that I didn't stop you from making a move on him earlier, but look at the state he's in. If you continue hitting him, he really might lose his life. Why don't we first calm down and listen to the full story before deciding on what to do? Xing Sword Saint said as he stroked his wife's back to calm her down. Meng Sword Saint shot the first elder a wintry glare before flinging her sleeves furiously. Humph. Seeing that his wife had stopped her attacks for the time being, the Xing Sword Saint secretly heaved a sigh of relief before turning his gaze toward the first elder. With an authoritative voice, he questioned, "What happened? Why did you issue a decree ordering for Zhong Xian's death?" Clan head Zhong Wuchen quickly stepped forward and said that Zhong Xian has been willfully destroying everything that he set his eyes upon after coming to the Zhong clan. It was only after being left with no choice that the first elder issued such a decree. Willfully destroying everything? The Xing Sword Saint raised his eyebrows. Are you saying that all of this rubble is his doing? He had been rather perplexed to see the state that the Zhong clan was in, but who could have thought that it would actually be Zhong Xian's doing? Indeed, he's the culprit behind this. Zhong Wuchen spat with gritted teeth. Look at what he has done to our many millenniums of heritage. This. The Xing Sword Saint was visibly dazed for a moment. He subconsciously turned to his wife and muttered, "That really resembles you." His wife was a walking wrecking ball, often causing destruction wherever she went. Her rampages had not stopped even after marrying into the Zhong clan, and it was to the point that the elders often kept a close eye on her in order to keep her in check. Who would have thought that Zhong Xian's prowess in destruction would actually be a level above hers? Isn't it just a couple of buildings? To kill a person over a couple of rocks and stones, is this the magnanimity that you should have as elders of the Zhong clan? If you are that afraid of your buildings being torn down, why don't I just help you demolish your ancestral hall so that you don't have to worry about it anymore? Meng Sword Saint harumphed as she wrapped her sword chi around her body, seemingly showing the members of the Zhong clan that she was not joking around. What the heck is this? You are going to kill my son over just a couple of collapsed building? Very well, just watch as I dig up the tombs of your ancestors then. It's not just about the buildings. The first elder's deep voice sounded. At this point, he had finally managed to recuperate enough to talk. He knew that the Meng Sword Saint was a lunatic who would not hesitate to destroy their ancestral hall, so with a flushed face, he hurriedly spoke up to stop her. What else is it then? The Meng Sword Saint glanced down at the first elder with narrowed eyes. I know what you're thinking. You must be suspecting that Zhong Xian is him, but I can tell you for certain he isn't. I have already tested his bloodline and soul, and it's been proven that he doesn't have the slightest hint of a relationship with the Zhong clan, the first elder quickly said. Bloodline? How can you have the cheek to talk about bloodline before me? The Meng Sword Saint widened her eyes in agitation as she shouted furiously. Fine. Putting that aside, I sensed traces of a soul oracle in his primordial spirit, and he even brought out an artifact of the otherworldly demonic tribe. This should show that there's a very high chance that he isn't a human but an otherworldly demon in disguise. The first elder quickly changed his words. Soul oracle? Artifact of the otherworldly demonic tribe. The Xing Sword Saint and Meng Sword Saint were taken aback upon hearing those words, and they swiftly exchanged glances with one another. They had suspected that Zhong Xian might be their missing child, but if he was a soul oracle. Indeed. I believe I need not say more about the depraved arts that soul oracles practice. I'm very certain that his primordial spirit is not one of an ordinary cultivator but that of a soul oracle. Even if you doubt me on that, there's no questioning that the artifact he used to attack me is one of the otherworldly demonic tribe. The pit over there was caused by that artifact, and the killing intent of the otherworldly demons is still lingering, the first elder said as he pointed in a certain direction. The Xing Sword Saint and Meng Sword Saint turned their gazes over. The pit was roughly several dozen meters deep, and while it appeared ordinary at first glance, with their sharp eye of discernment, they were still able to sense the faint aura of an otherworldly demon lingering within it. The artifacts of the otherworldly demonic tribe could only be driven using the zhenqi of slaughter, which only otherworldly demons possessed, so it was impossible for a human to activate it. Could Zhong Xian really not be their child but an otherworldly demon in disguise? It's indeed the aura of an otherworldly demon. The Xing Sword Saint nodded in confirmation before asking the first elder. What happened? It's like this. The first elder quickly explained the swordsmanship duel, the sudden breakthrough, and the cultivation ordeal in detail. A phantasmal space ordeal that brought a lightning tribulation even stronger than a macrocosm ascendancy ordeal. Upon hearing the full story, The Xing sword saint quickly looked at the marks of lightning strikes all around him before falling into deep thought. There was no doubt that his child would have achieved great things if he was still alive, but to draw in such a powerful lightning tribulation in his phantasmal space ordeal, not to mention successfully clearing it, this was something that he simply could not fathom even with the wildest of imagination. Could the other party really be an otherworldly demon in disguise, just as the first elder had said? The Meng sword saint harumphed. Isn't he Yang Shi's student? We should be able to uncover the truth by asking him. Indeed, we will know the truth just by asking him about him. The Xing sword saint nodded. However, Yang Shi is currently still in seclusion, so it isn't a good time to disturb him. Hong Long. Before he could finish his words, an overpowering aura gushed into the clouds. It emanated such a powerful pressure that it immediately silenced the entire surroundings. Yang Shi is out. Upon feeling this aura, everyone's eyes immediately lit up. The Xing sword saint and the others quickly headed off in a certain direction, and the other elders followed suit. Soon, they saw an old man floating in midair. The energy in his body was fluctuating greatly, making it hard to determine his current level of cultivation. Yang Shi. The crowd quickly clasped their fists upon seeing the old man. Yang Shi nodded with a faint smile. After trading some pleasantries, the first elder got to the matter at hand. Yang Shi, pardon me, but there's a question that I have to ask you. There's a young man going by the name of Zhong Xian who claims to be your student. May I know if that's true? Chapter 1477. He isn't my student, I only have one student, Feng Zi, Yang Shi replied with a frown. Zhong Xian isn't your student? Everyone was taken aback, especially the first elder and Feng Wuchen. They could not help but stare at one another with widened eyes. They had asked about this matter previously, and from the start to the end, Zhong Xian had claimed to be Yang Xian's direct disciple, inheriting the exclusive arts of his lineage. Was this all a lie? I have been busy over the years, so I haven't had any time to accept any other students. You should be well aware of this yourselves. What's wrong? Did someone claim to be my student? Yang Shi asked. Indeed. This Zhong Xian person claimed to be your direct disciple, and just a moment ago, he was even wreaking havoc in the Zhong clan, the first elder reported. Someone claimed to be my direct disciple? Yang Shi's face immediately darkened. Where is this Zhong Xian person you spoke of? Lineages were of the utmost importance in the master-teacher continent. Naturally, claiming to be another's student was an extremely disrespectful action and considered a taboo. Furthermore, from the sound of it, that person had been throwing his name around to cause trouble, and this was something that Yang Xian could not accept. He has already left via a teleportation formation, the first elder replied awkwardly. Teleportation formation? What happened? Yang Shi asked with a frown. Thus, the first elder went through the entire story once more. You are saying that a young lad who has just achieved a breakthrough to the phantasmal space realm was able to withstand a cultivation ordeal that wielded prowess surpassing that of a macrocosm ascendancy ordeal? Not only so, he was able to triumph over the geniuses of your Zhong clan, be it in terms of swordsmanship, painting, enchantment, appraising, and so on? Yang Shi was slightly taken aback by what he had heard. That is indeed the case. The first elder nodded. It's understandable for him to possess astounding abilities in a field or two, but to show such high expertise in so many fields at his age. I believe that there's a high chance that he's an otherworldly demon in disguise. It's indeed possible for an otherworldly demon emperor to disguise as a master teacher, but it's irrational for an otherworldly demon emperor to act so ostentatiously. Yang Shi shook his head, disagreeing with the first elder's point of view. While otherworldly demon emperors were able to disguise as master teachers, their disguises were not infallible. To prevent being exposed by 9-star master teachers, they would definitely try their best to lie low as much as possible. There was no way that they would drop by the Zhong clan and cause such a huge commotion. After all, was that not as good as exposing himself? If that was the case, what was the point of disguising himself in the first place? Unconvinced by Yang Shi's words, the first elder argued, if he isn't an otherworldly demon, how could he possibly be able to utilize the means of a soul oracle? How could he possibly be able to activate an artifact of the otherworldly demonic tribe? To pretend to be my student and wreak havoc here, and the possession of the knowledge of soul oracle arts too, that young lad seems to be quite an interesting figure. I would very much like to meet him. Do you know where his teleportation formation leads to? Yangsha asked with a soft chuckle. The first elder shook his head. I'm afraid that we aren't able to tell. If it was an ordinary teleportation formation, they might still have been able to fathom a guess. However, the teleportation formation that Zhongxian had used was extremely advanced, such that even an expert of the first elder's caliber was not able to interpret it at all, let alone guess where the young man had teleported to. You aren't able to tell? Yangsha frowned. Where did he teleported from? Bring me over. I want to take a look. The first elder and the others quickly led the way, and it did not take long for them to reach where Zhongxian had teleported away from. Yangsha lowered his head to study the area, but the more he looked, the deeper the frown of his forehead became. A moment later, he turned to the first elder and asked, did the other party have a token that resembles something like this in hand when he teleported? He tapped his finger lightly in front of him, and an illusory image of a token that emanated a light golden glow appeared in midair. Indeed, he did have this artifact with him. The first elder nodded. He used it to dodge my sword chi, so I believe that it should be a Saint Pinnacle artifact at the very minimum. The young man had used this token to block his attack earlier, so he had a particularly deep impression of it. Is that so? Hearing the first elder's confirmation, the frown on Yangsha's forehead seemed to have further deepened. Realizing that there was something amiss with Yangsha's expression, the first elder asked, Yangsha, do you recognize this token? Recognize? If Zhongxian really has this token in hand, just as you have said, there's a good chance that he might be. At this point, Yangsha abruptly halted his words. There was a short moment of silence before he waved his hand. Never mind, this isn't a good time to speak about it. I'll have to confirm it with my own eyes first. The implications regarding the Sanctum Head token were simply too great, such that even he did not dare speak of it lightly, especially since he was a Grand Elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. Even if he claimed it to be a mere hypothesis on his part, others would likely take his words as the truth due to the lofty position that he was in, and if it turned out that he was wrong, it could possibly lead to dire consequences. However, speaking of the token, he knew that the Sanctum Head token was distributed by Sage Kuei himself, and there was no way that Sage Kuei could have made such a major slip-up as to pass down the Sanctum Head position to an otherworldly demon. Even if Sage Kuei existed just as a sliver of will now, he had still been a powerful expert back in his era, as well as one of the very few possessors of the Eye of Insight. It was unthinkable that Zhongxian would be able to fool him if he truly was an otherworldly demon. While Yangsha was still deep in thought, Hu Yiwei suddenly rushed over and greeted, Old Master, you are finally out. Yangsha nodded. Through his sharp eye, he was able to tell that Hu Yiwei had something on his mind, so he asked, what's wrong? Old Master, I was in the Sanctum of Sages a while back, and I found a student named Zhongxian. I found the innate fetal poison that I planted back then in his body. Hu Yiwei quickly relayed what he had found. Innate fetal poison? He's the young prodigy of the Zhong clan? Even Yangsha was taken aback by that revelation. He turned to look at Sword Saint Xing at the others. At that moment, he could not help but feel a little dazed by the situation. On top of being the Sanctum Head of the Sanctum of Sages, a soul oracle, and an otherworldly demon, that Zhongxian person was actually the young prodigy of the Zhong clan too? Just what was wrong with that fellow? Was he suffering from dissociative personality disorder? Yangsha pondered for a moment before speaking. Since his identity as my student has been proven false, I believe that there's a need to look deeper into the matter to verify the authenticity of his other identities. Sword Saint Xing and Sword Saint Meng, the both of you shouldn't get your hopes up too much for the time being. We all know the circumstances surrounding the young prodigy, and the chances of him surviving are extremely slim. Why don't you allow me to meet him first and verify his identity before deciding on anything? I'm going with you, Sword Saint Meng said firmly. I feel like I'll regret it for life if I don't at least meet him in this moment. This was the best lead that she had found relating to her child in the past 2 decades. Even though the first elder and the others had found evidence that suggested the contrary, she was still reluctant to accept it until she verified it with her own eyes. Understanding Sword Saint Meng's feelings, Yangsha nodded. That's fine with me. I don't think that it's possible for Hu Yiwei to be wrongly about this, that young lad's surname also happens to be Zhong, and he comes from the ancient lands. Everything seems to fit together like pieces of a puzzle. It will indeed be hard to accept it unless you verify it with your own eyes. Yangsha, could it be that, you know where he has teleported to? Sword Saint Xing suddenly asked at this moment. If the first elder is right about the token, I think I have a good idea where he has teleported to. Yangsha nodded. If my guess is right, he should have returned to the Sanctum of Sages. Sanctum of Sages? Sword Saint Xing's lips twitched upon hearing those 3 words. He and his wife had rushed to the Sanctum of Sages after hearing Hu Yiwei's news, but halfway through their journey, they had heard that Zhong Xian was in their Zhong clan, so they had rushed all the way back. Yet, Yangsha was now telling them that he had gone back to the Sanctum of Sages? Just how could their luck be so bad, missing him each and every time? If I recall correctly, the Zhong clan doesn't have a teleportation formation leading to the Sanctum of Sages or anywhere in its vicinity. Since that's the case, I'll first teleport to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters and teleport to the Sanctum of Sages from there. The journey should take 1 day, thus saving us much time, Yangsha said. The Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters had teleportation formations leading all over the Master Teacher continent, not to mention that the Sanctum of Sages was its subsidiary. As such, it would be faster to take this detour instead. Considering the severity of this matter, it would be best for them to resolve it as quickly as possible. All right, Yangsha. We'll follow you. Sword Saint Xing nodded. Chapter 1478 Ninth Netherworld Dimension. The world spun around Zhong Xian, leaving him in a constant state of vertigo, when all of a sudden, he fell to the ground with a resounding crash. The teleportation had left him in such a disorientated state that he could not keep track of the flow of time. A second could have passed, but it could have been a year. Everything around him just kept changing, and the surrounding space warped like there was no tomorrow. Yeah. Zhong Xian found himself retching for a long while. After meditating for a while, the discomfort alleviated a little. Recalling the experience that he had just undergone, a bitter smile appeared on his face. No wonder it's impossible to make teleportation formations commonplace. There's no way weaker cultivators would be able to survive something like this. He had been wondering for a long while why the Master Teacher Pavilion had gone to the extent of building branches all over the continent but not built teleportation formations along with that. However, this single experience had him completely convinced about the impracticality of the matter. His physical body was comparable to a Saint Pinnacle artifact, but despite that, he still ended up retching at the end of it. Other cultivators, especially those beneath Saint 8 Dan, might very well find their own bodies disintegrating into dust from the sheer pressure caused by the teleportation formation. He was still feeling deeply uncomfortable due to the incompatibility between his body and primordial spirit, but he knew that there was no time to be wasted. Thus, he slowly got to his feet and scanned his surroundings. Where is this place? Based on the information on the Sanctum Head token, this should have been a hidden dimension left behind by Sage Kuei. Only potential Sanctum Head successors who had fulfilled the first 2 conditions would be qualified to enter this space. It's a folded space. Upon taking a closer look, Zhong Xian swiftly found that the fabric of space there was much weaker compared to that of the Master Teacher continent, and the concentration of spiritual energy was rather low. The ground that he was currently standing on was a round platform with a particularly profound formation inscribed on it. To be able to teleport him right into a folded space, it was apparent that the teleportation formation on the Sanctum Head token was a rather formidable one. Walking down from the round platform, Zhong Xian carefully explored the area, and he soon found a manor with lush greenery growing around it. There was a small stream flowing not too far away from it, giving it the feeling of a tranquil garden away from the secular world. Walking into the manor, the first thing that Zhong Xian saw was a hulking stone tablet, and carved on it were the words Divine Eyes of the Ninth Netherworld. Glancing lower down on the stone tablet, he found smaller words inscribed below, detailing the various circulation pathways required to cultivate the optic art. It was even more detailed than what Sage Kuei had imparted to him before. Welcome to the 9th netherworld dimension. Just as Zhongxian was taking in the content on the stone tablet into the library of Heaven's Path, a light voice suddenly filled the air. Recognizing the voice, Zhongxian asked as he looked around his surroundings, "Sage Kuei? There's no need to look for me. All that is left of me here is a slight sliver of my will, and I'm already unable to manifest in a physical form anymore," the will said with a slight desolate edge to its tone. "The fact that you were able to come to this dimension means that you have already successfully deciphered the first 2 seals and are qualified to practice the divine eyes of the 9th netherworld." Qualified? Indeed. The optic art manual that I have given to you is correct, but it isn't detailed enough for you to successfully master the optic art. It's not that I'm intentionally making things hard for you, but in order to master the divine eyes of the 9th netherworld, you will have to cultivate it in a certain environment. Otherwise, it would be nigh impossible to succeed, Sage Kuei said. A certain environment? Zhongxian was bewildered by those words. It was just a mere optic art. Why would it still need a certain kind of environment in order to cultivate it? There are 9 levels to the heavens, and similarly, there are 9 levels to the netherworld. In order to master the divine eyes of the 9th netherworld, you will have to be in an environment that emulates the environment of the netherworld. The environment stimulates your eye of insight and draws out the potential into it, and it's for this purpose that this very folded space was created, Sage Kuei explained. I see. Zhongxian nodded in realization. Having browsed through countless cultivation technique manuals, there were indeed some unique techniques that required cultivation in a specific type of environment in order to master them. For example, some fire attribute techniques could be mastered much more easily when cultivated in locations in close proximity to the earth flames. Similarly, there were also ice attribute techniques where cultivating them in icy lakes would enhance their prowess significantly. Since the divine eyes of the 9th netherworld was a technique on par with the heavenly art of dimension unravel, its cultivation was bound to be difficult as well. Otherwise, the generations of sanctum heads would not have failed to fully master the optic art. In this folded space are beguilement formations, illusory formations, hidden formations, and the like. There won't be any danger, but without a sharp eye, it's impossible for you to overcome those obstacles and get to the exit. You will have to rely on cultivating your divine eyes of the 9th netherworld to sharpen your eyes so as to find the flaws in those formations and overcome them, Sage Kuei said. This is manual that my teacher left behind back then, and the others are the insights left behind by generations of sanctum heads. You can refer to them, but ultimately, you will still have to comprehend it by yourself in order to grasp the technique. Hula. As Sage Kuei spoke, a few more stone tablets appeared in the courtyard of the manor. Zhongxian swiftly swept his gaze over the optic art manual and insights in order to collect them into the library of Heaven's Path. Compile. Zhongxian willed. Hula. A new book materialized before Zhongxian's eyes. He swiftly flipped it open to browse through it, and what he saw caused an involuntary sigh to escape from his lips. As expected of a top-notch optic art, even with the insights from the previous generations of sanctum heads, it was still a long way off from being perfected. The divine eyes of the 9th netherworld did improve significantly after several of the flaws were resolved. With this, I should be able to master the optic art faster. Yet, its cultivation is still highly damaging to the eyes, which means that there's a high chance that I'll turn blind if I really master the technique. The greatest hesitation behind why Zhongxian refused to cultivate the divine eyes of the 9th netherworld was not just because it was imperfect but because there was a high likelihood of going blind cultivating it. Even the very creator of the technique, ancient sage Bo Shong, was not spared from the eventual tragedy of going blind, and Zhongxian had no intention of walking in the same footsteps as his predecessor. Zhongxian continued examining the optic art a little longer, but unable to figure out a feasible method to resolve the underlying issues, he shook his head and said, I don't have any intention of cultivating the optic art for the time being. Can you allow me to leave this folded space first? You want to leave? There's only one chance for you to get into the 9th netherworld dimension. If you don't cultivate your divine eyes of the 9th netherworld to the 4th realm now, it will be hard for you to grasp it in the future. Not expecting the young man to be thinking of leaving when he had only just entered the area, Sage Kuei advised him with a frown. The position of the sanctum head was at stake here. Was the young man not acting a little too carelessly? Elder, a student of mine is currently in great peril. As her teacher, I can't ignore her safety for the sake of my own cultivation. I wish for your understanding on this matter. Zhongxian clasped his fist. He did not know what Zhao Ya was facing at the moment, so he could not afford to waste his time there. He had to find Chen Liao as soon as possible to find out more about the situation before devising a plan to save her. Even if he could cultivate the divine eyes of the ninth netherworld safely, it was likely that he would take quite some time to master it, so he could not afford to do it right now. You said that your student is in danger? Sage Kuei looked at Zhongxian. Are you certain that you wish to give up this rare opportunity for the sake of your student? Elder, I can't leave my student in peril, Zhongxian replied resolutely. If he had to compromise Zhao Ya's safety in order to master the divine eyes of the ninth netherworld and become the next sanctum head, he would throw away those opportunities in a heartbeat. While it was true that becoming the sanctum head would give him an edge when asking for Luo Ruoxin's marriage in hand, he was not willing to sacrifice his student's life for it. Sage Kuei was silent for a long while before nodding slightly. To be willing to give up on so much for your student, you are really a good teacher. However, rules are rules. There's only one chance to enter the ninth netherworld dimension, and I can't change the rules just because of the circumstances you are in, so you won't be able to return here once you leave. However, the lengths you are willing to go for your student is truly respectable. Thus, if you are able to comprehend the fourth realm of the optic art outside, I'll grant you an opportunity to comprehend the fifth realm. Chapter 1479 Too far an opportunity to comprehend the fifth realm? Zhongxian was slightly taken aback. Indeed. The fifth realm of the Eye of Insight is known as phantasmagoric construct. An illusory world created through the eye, this technique allows one to plunge even experts surpassing Saint Nine Dan into living hell, a nightmare that they will never awake from. Back then, with this very technique, my teacher, ancient sage Bo Shong, eradicated over 1 million otherworldly demons with just a single glance, creating an undefeatable legend. Under normal circumstances, it's impossible for one to comprehend this realm without being in the ninth netherworld dimension, but in view of the fact that you are leaving in order to save your student, I'll make an exception just for you. As long as you can comprehend the fourth realm, Demon Vanquisher, and decipher the final seal on the Sanctum Head token, I'll grant you an opportunity to comprehend the fifth realm, Sage Kuei said. Thank you, Elder. Zhongxian clasped his fist and bowed deeply to Sage Kuei. It did not seem likely that he would ever master the divine eyes of the ninth netherworld, but nevertheless, he was still very appreciative of the kindness and opportunity that Sage Kuei had given him. Lineages were important within the master-teacher continent, and those who were willing to go to great lengths for their teacher or students were highly respected. For his student, Zhongxian was willing to give up on this precious opportunity to master the divine eyes of the ninth netherworld. To a potential sanctum head, this was really a huge sacrifice. Once he left the ninth netherworld dimension, there was a high chance that he would never comprehend the fourth realm of the Eye of Insight, thus missing the opportunity to become the real sanctum head. There's no need to thank me. It's not too difficult to leave this area. You just have to return to the round platform that you were on when you first teleported in and will to leave this area with the Sanctum Head token in hand. You will automatically be teleported out, Sage Kuei said. Thank you. Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Without any hesitation, he turned around and walked toward the round platform. He took out his Sanctum Head token and grasped it tightly. Wang. A powerful force tugged at his body, and with a slight jolt, he disappeared from the spot. Watching as Zhongxian left without the slightest hint of hesitation, Sage Kuei muttered, a teacher should have a compassionate heart. To be willing to give up so much for his student, perhaps he might just be able to lead the sanctum of sages to unprecedented heights. Compassion might seem to be of little importance to those in important positions, playing a secondary role to one's capability. However, it was often the mark of a truly great leader, as those with great compassion would find it easier to win others over. Given how the young man before him was able to stick unwaveringly to his beliefs, Decisively abandoning all else to protect what he deemed to be the most important to him, he would likely rise to a great height in the future. He might even surpass the many generations of Sanctum heads before him, who, unaware of Sage Kuei's high evaluation of him, Zhongxian found himself crashing onto the floor once more. This time, perhaps because the distance teleported was shorter, he did not feel as much discomfort as before, and the temporal disorientation that he had experienced previously did not come. He shook his head lightly before slowly getting to his feet. When he saw familiar sights in his surroundings, he subconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he had thought, he had returned to the Sanctum of Sages. He was currently in the inner sanctum, not too far from Sage Kuei's sculpture, which held vicious upper body. Could it be that the so-called ninth netherworld dimension is actually within Sage Kuei's sculpture? Zhongxian frowned. Since he had appeared there, the folded space that he had been in should not be too far away. Could it be that it was hidden within the sculpture, just like vicious upper body? Forget it. I should first look for Chen Liao to understand the situation regarding Zhao Yue first. Knowing that this was no time to allow his mind to wander, he quickly took out the inner sanctum token and walked over to the exit before swiping it in the air lightly. Sila. A rift appeared in space. Zhongxian walked into the rift and left the inner sanctum. The sun had already set outside, and the Sanctum of Sages was particularly quiet. This piece felt peculiarly out of place to Zhongxian, especially considering what he had just encountered in the Zhong clan. He quickly figured out the direction to Chen Liao's residence and flew over. Zhongshe, you. Chen Liao was astounded by Zhongxian's sudden arrival. When she sent the message earlier, the young man had still been several million li away. To arrive before her in just a few minutes, even someone as calm as her could not help but be flabbergasted. What happened to Zhao Yue? Zhongxian asked anxiously. I don't know. Chen Liao shook her head grimly. I was in the midst of my cultivation when I suddenly received that message from the young court chief. I knew that you weren't in the Sanctum of Sages, so I could only send her message to you via the formation. Unfortunately, the transmission stopped after she'd barely said a few words. From the looks of it, it seemed like Chen Liao was perplexed by the matter as well. Zhongxian pondered for a moment before asking, aside from Zhao Yue's message, is there any news from the Glacier Plain Court? As soon as the transmission from the young court chief was terminated, I immediately sent a message to my sisters in the Glacier Plain Court, but the responses that I received were that everything was fine, and the young court chief hadn't left the Glacier Plain Court, Chen Liao replied. Could it be a false alarm? Impossible. Zhongxian immediately refuted Chen Liao's guess. He knew Zhao Yue well. She would never call for his help unless she was in a truly dire situation. Something was definitely amiss. Then, what do you plan to do? Chen Liao asked with a frown. To be honest, she was more inclined to believe that the young court chief was still safe. After all, the latter's position was second only to the court chief, so there was no way that the Glacier Plain Court would remain idle if the latter was in danger. Still, given that a cry for help had been sent, it would be foolish to simply shrug the matter off. Zhongxian pondered in silence for a long while before demanding with narrowed eyes, bring me to the Glacier Plain Court. You want to go to the Glacier Plain Court? Chen Liao was taken aback. Right now? That's right. Zhongxian nodded resolutely. But the Glacier Plain Court is several million li away from here. It will take at least a month even if you ride on a Saint Nine Dan beast. If the young court chief is really in danger, it will be too late by the time we arrive, Chen Liao said. The distance from the Sanctum of Sages to the Glacier Plain Court was further than the distance from there to the Zhong clan. It would take more than a month, and if something had really happened to the young court chief, everything would be over by the time they arrived. A month. Hearing those words, Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly. A month was indeed too long. Since Zhao Yue had sent such an urgent message over, there was no way that she could hang on for that long. However, there was no way for him to cover several million li swiftly, unless... Are there any teleportation formations in the Sanctum of Sages that lead straight to the Glacier Plain Court? Zhongxian raised his head and asked. Having used a teleportation formation before, He knew that it was possible for it to cover a journey that would usually take a month in just a few breaths. If there was a teleportation formation in the Sanctum of Sages that led to the Glacier Plain Court, he would be able to resolve this conundrum. I'm afraid there aren't. Chen Liyao shook her head. The Glacier Plain Court has only constructed teleportation formations to a few powers that it is closer with, and this doesn't include the Sanctum of Sages. In fact, my sisters and I had to take aerial saint beasts over back then. Considering how a teleportation formation would allow a cultivator to instantaneously teleport from one place to another, unless the two powers had close ties with one another, there was no way that they would build a teleportation formation between them. Otherwise, the other party could potentially make use of the teleportation formation to cause harm. Then, what's the closest teleportation location to the Glacier Plain Court from the Sanctum of Sages? Zhong Xian asked. That would be the Yuan clan, but still, it would take half a month from the Yuan clan to get there, Chen Liyao said hesitantly. She understood how the young man before her felt, but the Glacier Plain Court was located in the frosty lands at the very north of the continent, so there was no way one could get there easily. Half a month? That's still too long. Since you know the specific location of the Glacier Plain Court, is it possible for me to just construct a teleportation formation to take us there directly? Zhong Xian asked with a frown. Chapter 1480 Heaven's Path Teleportation Formation. Yuan Dao was in the Yuan clan, so he would not face any problems teleporting into their clan. However, the half a month that it would take to travel from the Yuan clan to the Glacier Plain Court was much too long. Since there was no other more convenient teleportation formation for him to take, why not just construct one? You wish to construct a teleportation formation? Chen Liyao was startled by the unexpected suggestion. Following which, she shook her head bitterly and said, teleportation formations can only be constructed by real 9-star formation masters, especially since they require a deep comprehension of space in order to build them properly. On top of that, their structure is incredibly intricate, requiring complex calculations that must be perfectly precise. Even the slightest error in a calculation could cause a vast difference in the end result. I have never seen the construction of the teleportation formations in the Glacier Plain Court before, but I have had the opportunity to see how they repaired one. Back then, our Glacier Plain Court hired 3 9-star formation masters, and despite their collaboration, it still took them 3 whole months before they completed the calculations required to calibrate the teleportation formation. Putting aside our lack of strength and comprehension of formations, even if we do have the ability to set up a teleportation formation, there's no way we could build it swiftly. Putting aside everything else, just the calibration of the teleportation formation to the determined destination was enough to take them several months of calculations. For a distance of several million li, the slightest difference in calibration could lead to a massive deviation in the final destination. All in all, with all of these factors at play, the construction of a teleportation formation was bound to be a highly time-consuming project. It would not help their current situation. Otherwise, the Master-Teacher Pavilion would have already set up teleportation formations all over the continent. There would not just be a couple of them located in the major powers in the continent, such that most average cultivators had seen them before. 3 months. Zhong Xian felt yet another headache assaulting his already hurting head. If it took that long to repair a formation, its construction was bound to take even longer. Was there really no way for him to reach Zhao Yue quickly? Zhong Xian pondered for a long moment before his eyes suddenly lit up. It might take others a long time to complete the calculations required to calibrate the formation, but I should be able to shorten the process significantly. Regardless of what formation one wanted to set up, one would have to first take the environment into account and assess how the formation should best be set up in order to align it with the surroundings before placing down the formation flags. For this reason, setting up formations, especially higher-grade ones, often took formation masters a great deal of time. They had to use their compass to make all kinds of measurement, such as the direction, concentration, gradient of spiritual energy in the surroundings, the effects the surrounding geography would have on the formation, and so on. However, Zhong Xian was different. With his library of Heaven's Path, he would be able to resolve the problems through simple trial and error. There was no need for him to go to great lengths calculating this and that. Since he could do so for other formations, Naturally, he would also be able to do the same for teleportation formations. With this thought in mind, Zhongxian decided to dive straight to action. Let's go, we're heading to the Hall of Erudition. I'm going to see if there are any books relating to teleportation formations that I can refer to. It would be best if I can set one up, but if that fails, I'll just have to find another solution, he said. Study. Right now? Chen Liao asked with twitching lips. Putting aside how difficult it would be to set up a teleportation formation, just the manipulation of space required for its construction was more than enough to leave any ordinary formation master utterly helpless. Was it not a little too late to start studying? Instead of pursuing something futile, would it not have been much wiser to set out that instant? We have no time to waste, hurry up. Without explaining anything, Zhongxian took the lead and walked out. He had been to the Formation Master Guild branch in the Hall of Erudition once and even taken the 8-star Formation Master examination there, so he knew the route there very well. While Chen Liao had no idea what Zhongxian was thinking, she knew that everything he did was to save their young court chief, so she eventually chose to follow him as well. It did not take long before the two of them were standing before Elder Su of the Formation Master Guild. Elder Su was the person who had supervised his 8-star Formation Master examination back then, so he was still a more familiar figure to Zhongxian. Elder Su, I would like to browse through books relating to teleportation formations. May I ask if there are such books in the Formation Master Guild? Zhongxian revealed the purpose of his sudden visit. Teleportation formations have always been an important research topic for the Sanctum of Sages. In fact, during Sage Kuei's era, the Sanctum of Sages was even reputed to be the #1 authority in this field. He has left behind many books regarding the topic, and if you wish to browse through them, I can take you there. Elder Su nodded. Zhongxian was already an 8-star formation master, so he was qualified to look through those books. I'll be troubling Elder Su then. Zhongxian clasped his fist. It did not take long before they arrived in the library. Heading in the direction that Elder Su had pointed toward, Zhongxian soon saw multiple shelves storing countless books relating to teleportation formations. The Sanctum of Sages had never lacked geniuses, and while the field of teleportation formations was particularly profound, there were still plenty of talented individuals studying the subject, hoping to further it. As such, there were many books relating to how a teleportation formation could be set up, how the location could be calibrated, how the space should be manipulated, and so on. Zhongxian swiftly swept his gaze through those books and collected them into the Library of Heaven's Path. Compile. A new book materialized, and Zhongxian quickly flipped it open. Heaven's Path Teleportation Formation Art. Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Perhaps because there were ample books in there, he managed to compile the Heaven's Path Teleportation Formation Art. Tapping his finger lightly on it, the knowledge immediately flowed into his head, assimilating with his previous understanding of formations. Previously, he had already finished browsing through all 8-star formation master books, which granted him knowledge of formations that was on par with 9-star primary formation masters. On top of that, his mastery of the heavenly art of dimension unravel had also reached the 3rd realm. Thus, while teleportation formations was a rather difficult subject for most to comprehend, he did not have much trouble understanding its content. It did not take long before he fully grasped the Heaven's Path teleportation formation art. Knowing that he was ready, he quickly walked out of the library, and after finding Elder Su, he asked, Elder Su, do you have any grade 9 formation flags on hand? I would like to borrow them. Teleportation formations were all grade 9 formations, so naturally, they required grade 9 formation flags in order to set up. I don't have any grade 9 formation flags on me. Elder Su shook his head and apologized. He was only an 8-star formation master, so how could he possibly have any grade 9 formation flags on hand? Do you happen to know of anyone who has grade 9 formation flags? Zhongxian asked. Grade 9 formation flags. Elder Su pondered for a moment before replying. If I'm not mistaken, our deputy sanctum head, Zhon Shuo, should have some. Other than that, I'm afraid I don't really know anyone else who has them. Zhonsha. Zhongxian nodded slowly. He had met Zhonsha once. Back then, he had just cleared the Master Teacher Tower, and the other party had taken him into the inner sanctum and given him his inner sanctum token. Considering how he was a Saint 9 Dan expert and the deputy sanctum head, it did make sense for all of the grade 9 formation flags of the Sanctum of Sages to be with him. After all, others did not even possess the strength to control them. In the past, the Sanctum of Sages had been an extremely powerful organization with plenty of 9-star master teachers in its ranks. However, due to the lack of a powerful sanctum head to lead them for many years, it had declined greatly, such that it could not compete with the more powerful sage clans in terms of absolute strength. Nevertheless, its rich heritage, vast connections, and the very fact that it was a direct subsidiary of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters still gave the Sanctum of Sages a lot of influence and authority in the Master Teacher continent. Swiftly making sense of the situation, Zhongxian asked, "Elder Su, I'm really grateful for your help today. Do you know where the Deputy Sanctum Head is at the moment? He should be in the Sanctum Head Hall. You can try looking for him there," Elder Su said with a smile. Very well. Zhongxian called for Chen Liao, and the both of them swiftly headed over to the Sanctum Head Hall. However, barely before he took flight, he suddenly felt a chilling sensation over his entire body. He quickly sidestepped in midair. TZ La. Barely after he did so, the space where he was standing before was suddenly ripped open by a surge of sword chi. The sword chi surged straight for the ground, tearing out a deep gorge. "I'm going to kill you." Following which, an infuriated bellow echoed. Taken aback, Zhongxian quickly turned his head over, only to see a young man standing not too far away, glaring at him with infernos blazing in his eyes. "Luo Shenqing, are you insane?" Zhongxian bellowed furiously. Chapter 1481 Luo Xuanqing's wrath. The person who had assaulted him was none other than his future brother-in-law, Luo Shenqing. Before he went to the Zhong clan, he had helped Luo Shenqing deal with his lightning tribulation, and as a show of trust in him, the latter had also confided in him his plans to assassinate him and tried to entrust the task to him. They had been as close as real brothers then. Why would Luo Shenqing suddenly turn against him now? If not for his recent breakthrough, which allowed him to dodge swiftly, he might have sustained heavy injuries by now. "Die!" Luo Shenqing bellowed. Boom! With a deafening roar, Luo Shenqing flitted forward like a streak of lightning, and in the blink of an eye, his punch was already right before Zhongxian. He had already reinforced his dimension-sundering realm cultivation completely, allowing him to call forth far greater strength than before. For one, the sheer might of his strength had compressed the space so much that Zhongxian felt as if someone had lifted a metal sheet and was hurling it at him. "Are you out of your mind?" Zhongxian did not expect the other party to make a move on him without any hesitation, using such a vicious technique toward him. His hair immediately stood on end. At this moment, he had not fully fused his primordial spirit and physical body together, and if not for his tenacity pushing him on, he would have already fainted. While he had recovered sufficiently to move about, he could only summon a fifth of his original strength in his current state. Thus, he had no choice but to evade Luo Xuanqing's attack. Catcher! Barely after he had dodged, a resounding explosion echoed, and another spatial rift was torn open where he had been standing at previously. Luo Xuanqing's Saint 8 Dan cultivation, paired together with the innate comprehension of space due to his Luo clan bloodline, granted him tremendous fighting prowess. Even ordinary Saint 8 Dan pinnacle experts would not stand a chance against him. Sila. Despite his strike missing, Luo Shenqing continued rushing at Zhongxian, launching attack after attack frenziedly. His silhouette seemed to be weaving through the very fabric of space, shockingly moving at a speed faster than even the Heaven's Path movement art. In the blink of an eye, he was already standing right before Zhongxian once more, not giving the latter any chance to take a breather. "I went to the Zhong clan because I had something up. I really didn't have time to kill your target for you." Thinking that Luo Shenqing was angry at him for not helping him assassinate himself, Zhongxian anxiously tried to explain himself as he dodged from side to side. Unfortunately, the explanation only seemed to have provoked Luo Shenqing further. "After seducing my younger sister, how dare you act as if nothing is wrong at all? You shameless cad. You be **starred. Luo Shenqing roared angrily as he thrust both of his palms toward Zhongxian. Puha! In that instant, Zhongxian felt the surrounding space collapsing on him, rendering him immobile. If not for his current condition, he definitely would have been able to break Luo Xuanqing's spatial seal even with his phantasmal space realm pinnacle cultivation. However, the giddiness plaguing his head was already making it an arduous task for him to remain in the sky. He was in no position to protect himself. Pang! A punch sunk into Zhongxian's chest, causing his face to turn pale. He was rammed right into the ground, creating a huge pit beneath him. Please, I'm begging you all, don't fight here, alright? We have just fixed this place. Elder Su cried desperately as he watched the battle between the two. The Formation Master Guild would be destroyed each time the King of Destruction descended upon them. It was one thing if the two of them had gone there to take an examination, but why the heck did they have to choose to fight there? Just how in the world did our Formation Master Guild offended the two of you for you to do this to us? Paying no heed to Elder Su's cries, after punching Zhongxian into the ground, Luo Xuanqing pushed himself against thin air and whizzed right toward him once more. Peng 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 peng. It was as if Luo Xuanqing's arms had multiplied into 8. Countless punches just kept raining down upon Zhongxian. Zhongxian was completely incapable of dodging the punches at all. Under the furious barrage of attacks, blood spurted from his lips. Stop it, are you insane? Zhongxian hurriedly drove his zhenqi to heal his wounds as he bellowed angrily. Just how had he hit Luo Xuanqing's nerves this time around? They had parted on a good note, so why would the other party suddenly assault him as if a madman without saying a single word at all? Insane? If I'm insane, you are the one who has driven me so. With reddened eyes, Luo Xuanqing charged forward and sent a kick toward Zhongxian. You! Knowing that he would sustain severe injuries if he was hit, Zhongxian suppressed his giddiness and waved his hand. Boom! The space before him collapsed slightly, warping Luo Xuanqing's kick away from him. While he might only be at phantasmal space realm pinnacle, as one who had cultivated the Heaven's Path divine art and the heavenly art of dimension unravel, he was already able to go toe-to-toe with ordinary dimension sundering realm pinnacle experts. As powerful as Luo Xuanqing was, if he used his Eye of Insight and Library of Heaven's Path, the other party would not stand a chance at all. Pada! Luo Xuanqing's kick ended up striking the ground, sending a massive tremor through the earth as a huge crater was formed on the spot. After missing his strike, Luo Xuanqing huddled his body together and rammed it right toward Zhongxian. Pang! Zhongxian wanted to dodge, but another sudden bout of dizziness caused his reaction to be delayed, resulting in him being struck squarely in his chest. Hong long long! As if a steel plow, he rolled several rounds on the ground, tearing a gorge several dozen meters long. A sweet sensation welled up at the back of his throat, and yet another mouthful of blood spewed from his mouth. After spurting the blood, Zhongxian suddenly froze on the spot, seemingly realizing something. There was no doubt that Luo Xuanqing's attacks were very powerful, and the words that he had said were also filled with anger toward him, but Zhongxian found that the other party's attacks were, in fact, superficial. The impact of his blows did not sink deep into his body to puncture his organs and ruin his physiological functions. In other words, he would only sustain external injuries from the assault, and this was far from sufficient to claim his life. Furthermore, his attacks also seemed to be hastening the fusion between my body and my primordial spirit. On top of that, Zhongxian also realized that Luo Xuanqing's attacks were highly beneficial to him. The two heavy blows that he had sustained had alleviated the giddiness in his head significantly, and his body did not feel as heavy and hard to maneuver as before. It looks like he isn't really trying to kill me. Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief as he no longer tried his best to dodge Luo Xuanqing's attacks. At the same time, he could not help but become even more bewildered as to what Luo Xuanqing was up to. Peng 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 peng. As Zhongxian was not dodging anymore, all of Luo Xuanqing's attacks fell squarely on his body. While the powerful might striking his body caused him excruciating pain, his overpowered primordial spirit was also slowly fusing together with his physical body once more, alleviating the discomfort and heaviness he felt. Every single move that Luo Xuanqing has executed harnesses the energy of space, and it's precisely this energy that is resolving the incompatibility between my body and my primordial spirit. Zhong Xian was able to swiftly make sense of the situation. It might not have been an intentional action on Luo Xuanqing's part, but perhaps due to his Luo clan bloodline, every single strike of his caused some spatial energy to seep into his body, which aided in pushing for the fusion. He had been deliberating over this problem for a very long time, not knowing how to resolve it, but who could have thought that suffering a beating from Luo Xuanqing would actually be the key to it? All along, he had been the one to pummel others in order to treat them of their ailments. What goes around does come around after all. Peng peng peng. Soon, upon seeing that Zhong Xian had been completely disfigured from his pummeling, the heavily panting Luo Xuanqing finally came to a halt. It had to be said that Zhong Xian was really resilient to beating. He had expended all of his strength punching that fellow, but even at the end of it, that fellow was still standing as if nothing had happened at all. From the looks of it, that fellow's defenses were at least on par with Yuan Xiao's. Stretching his fatigued body, he lay down on the rubble not too far away from where Zhong Xian was. You must make sure to treat my younger sister well. If I ever learn that you have let her down, I'll make sure to kill you with my own hand. Why you? Zhong Xian widened his eyes in shock. Chapter 1482 Luo Xuanqing. It was just a moment ago when he had still been wondering which screw was loose in Luo Xuanqing's head to suddenly pummel him relentlessly like that, but those words had cleared all doubts in his mind. It was not that Luo Xuanqing's violent streak was acting up once more, but that he had found out about the relationship between Luo Ruoxin and him. He had thought of telling Luo Xuanqing about this matter in the past, but every single time, he would stop at the final moment because he had no idea how he should broach the subject. Yet, to think that the other party would actually find out about it himself. In that moment, he was so shocked that it felt as if his mind would blow up. Just as he was about to ask how Luo Xuanqing found out about that matter, it suddenly dawned on him that Luo Xuanqing had already stumbled onto the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy lead. It would not be too hard to trace him down from there, especially since he was the principal. Xuanqing, Abruptly placed in such a situation, Zhong Xian had no idea what he should say. It was true that he had gotten close with Luo Xuanqing in order to get to Luo Ruoxin, so it was understandable that he would be unhappy to learn of his ulterior motive. The other party had thought of him as a true friend, but it turned out that he was only getting close to him in order to flirt with his younger sister. Who would be happy about that? My younger sister's talents are both a gift and a cursing. Throughout her life, she has never met anyone whom she could truly call a friend. While the entire Luo clan treats her well and respects her, it's that attitude of theirs that created an invisible boundary between her and the others, effectively isolating her. Every night, I would see her sitting alone on the roof, watching her gaze at the starry night sky. You can't even begin to imagine how forlorn her profile looked. Despite being her elder brother, I was unable to assuage the loneliness she felt, so I could only use all of my strength to protect her and offer her the best. I have always thought that her loneliness would dissipate once she found someone whom she loves, and I have always envisioned the person whom she would fancy to be someone stronger than her, possessing astounding capabilities unmatched by anyone else in the world, but who would have thought that she would end up choosing you? Paying no heed to Zhong Xian's shock, Luo Xuanqing gazed deeply at the starry sky above and muttered to himself. Zhong Xian scratched his head awkwardly. Indeed. When he first got together with Luo Ruoxin, the latter's cultivation had been far above his, such that it would be no exaggeration to say that they were from two entirely different worlds. To this day, he still could not say that he was worthy of her. But one's feelings simply did not obey rational logic. The fondness that he felt for Luo Ruoxin would not vanish just because of the gap in their standing. In fact, from the moment that he first set eyes on her, he had felt an inexplicable feeling of intimacy to her, as if they were meant to be. It took only an instant to realize that she was the missing piece that he had been looking for his entire life, and he would never feel whole without her. I have been thinking about this matter over the past few days. My younger sister really likes you, and the notion of you getting together with her doesn't seem as revolting as I thought it would be. At the very least, I'm familiar with you. While you do get into trouble often, you tend to be unreliable at times, your words sound like a pile of dog shit *t, and you are doltish at times. On the whole, I'm still quite satisfied with your capability. Luo Xuanqing continued. Black lines streaked across Zhong Shen's face. Big bro, are you praising or berating me? Get into trouble often? To think that I would hear such words from the likes of your mouth. Unreliable? How am I unreliable? You are the one who is unreliable. Also, my words sound like a pile of dog shit *t, and I am doltish at times. You are the one who is doltish. It's a known fact that my younger sister has successfully assimilated the Dimension Silencer and is the #1 genius of the Luo clan. Even compared to the young prodigy of the Zhong clan, he's lacking in comparison. Not only so, her looks are also top-notch, almost as if she was the favored one of the heavens, but I know that she isn't happy. A heavy responsibility weighs down her shoulders, and no matter how she struggles, she's unable to free herself of the constraints fate has shackled on her, Luo Shenqing said with a heavy voice. If she's unable to struggle free out of the shackles of fate, then at the very least, I hope that she will be granted the joys of a passionate love. I want her to be with someone she loves and not someone she's engaged to. Hearing the thoughts of his future brother-in-law, Zhong Shen said, I understand. Don't worry about the engagement, I'll deal with it. As long as the young prodigy did not appear, the Zhong clan would be dispatching Zhong Zhouxiao for the engagement. Given the fact that Zhong Zhouxiao was his student, it would be for him to decide whether the engagement went ahead or not. So, there would not be much of a problem regarding that. Unless, the shameless young prodigy appeared at that moment. You'll deal with it. How do you intend to deal with it? Luo Shenqing scoffed. If the engagement could be resolved that easily, given my younger sister's strength, she would have broken free of it by herself. Would she be placed in such a quandary over it? I don't understand. If your younger sister doesn't will for it, she could always choose not to marry. Why is this such an issue? Zhong Shen asked. He could understand that it was political marriage with much on the line, but if both the groom and the bride refused to marry, surely the marriage would be called off. What was so difficult about this matter? It seems like you are really unaware of it. This marriage isn't just a simple political marriage between both clans. More important than that. At this point, Luo Shenqing suddenly paused. A moment later, he shook his head and said, Forget it, you wouldn't understand even if I told you. I once promised the elders in my clan that I would kill the man whom my younger sister loves, but you are simply too strong. So, it's not that I didn't try to kill you but that I'm unable to do it. Thus, I have not ignored the order from my clan. Ah! Zhong Shen was dazed. In the end, the reason the other party seemed so desperate to kill him was because of the orders from his clan. It would be best if he could accomplish his mission, but if he could not do it, there was nothing that could be done. However, since I was able to uncover your identity, it shouldn't be too difficult for the elders in the clan to find out about it as well. I do not hope to see the person my younger sister likes to die so young. Luo Shenqing stood up and placed his hands behind his back. She told me to take care of you and not allow you to come to harm. Your strength is currently not beneath mine, so it's already beyond my capability to take care of you. However, you have to know that powerful clans possess many means to deal with a person. Be careful. Thank you for your reminder. Zhong Shen clasped his hand. Were it anyone else, he would have long let out the Inferno Cheline and the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. There was no way that he would have allowed the other party to beat him up like that. With these two saint beasts on his side, even the experts of the Luo clan would have difficulty killing him. Even in the worst-case scenario, he would still be able to escape. Don't die, Luo Shenqing muttered before dashing ahead, disappearing into the night sky. Geez. Zhong Shen shook his head as he used his zhenqi to swiftly heal his injuries before slowly standing up. He knew just how much Luo Shenqing doted on his younger sister, so upon hearing that a person whom he had trusted so deeply turned out to be his younger sister's lover, it was no wonder he was so furious. For someone as hot-tempered as Luo Shenqing, it must have taken a lot of self-restraint for him to hold himself back so much. Zhong Shen clenched his fists tightly and muttered, Don't worry, I'll definitely treat Ruoxin well. I won't let the slightest harm come to her, no matter how much effort he would have to put in. As long as he could be together with Luo Ruoxin in the end, he would not utter a single word of complaint. This was his promise to Luo Shenqing, as well as his promise to Luo Ruoxin and himself. "You are good brother," Zhongxian said. Between his responsibilities to the clan and his younger sister, he eventually chose to side with her younger sister. Such an action could be considered a betrayal to the Luo clan, and as someone who had grown up as the young master of the Luo clan, this was definitely not an easy decision to make. "Alright, I should get to looking for Zhongshi now." After resting for a moment, Zhongxian finally recovered fully from his injuries. Without any hesitation, he flew straight for the Sanctum Head Hall. Chapter 1483. You should stay here for a while. In the Sanctum Head Hall, Zhongshi was pacing around with a tight frown on his forehead. "Elder Ge, how do you view this matter?" In the main hall, an elder was seated in one of the chairs, holding a communication jade token in his hands with an unreadable expression on his face. The head of the Hall of Integrity, Elder Ge. Zhong Wuheng, has led the Zhong clan for many years, and is very particular about the Zhong clan's reputation on the Master Teacher continent. Since he passed a decree in his capacity as the first elder, Zhongxian must have really done something unforgivable to the Zhong clan, Elder Ge said severely. They had some formal ties with the first elder of the Zhong clan, and they knew the latter to be a rational and dignified individual. For him to fly into such a rage and send a message to them overnight, even requesting for their help to apprehend Zhongxian, it seemed like that fellow had raised quite a storm in the Zhong clan this time around. "I am of the same view as you, but no matter what, he's still Yangshi's student," Zhongxi said with a frown. "So what if he's Yangshi's student? All are equal in the eyes of the law." Back then, when Kongshi's direct disciple made a grave mistake, he was also punished before the crowd. As talented as Zhongxian may be, I think his arrogance is clear for us all to see. Just look at what he has done in his time here. I'm not in the least surprised that he would wreak havoc in the Zhong clan. Since Elder Wuheng has already made this request of us, why don't we help him apprehend Zhongxian? This way, not only will we be able to win the Zhong clan's favor, it'll also show the impartiality of our Sanctum of Sages in not blindly siding with our students, Elder Ge said. "What you have said does make some sense. While I'm still not too sure what Zhongxian has done in the Zhong clan, we can't just one-sidedly cover up for him. For the time being, you should dispatch some men to investigate what happened at the Zhong clan, as well as whether Zhongxian has really utilized some means of teleportation that allowed him to secretly return to the Sanctum of Sages. Also, if you catch sight of Zhongxian, apprehend him right away. No matter what, we have to offer an explanation to the Zhong clan, so we can't let him slip away at this point in time," Zhongxi instructed. Previously, he had thought that Zhongxian might be a potential candidate to becoming the Sanctum Head, but the investigation over the past month had left him more and more convinced that it would be Feng Zi instead. Given so, there was no point offending the powerful Zhong clan over a mere Zhongxian, especially given the weakened state that the Sanctum of Sages was in. "Alright, I'll have it done," Elder Ge nodded as he got to his feet, preparing to head out. However, at this moment, knocking suddenly sounded on the door. "Is Zhongxi inside? I am Zhongxian, and I have something that I need your help with." Zhongxian? He actually came knocking of his own accord. The two elders glanced at one another in astonishment. That fellow was way too gutsy. It was just a moment ago that they had been discussing how they should go about apprehending that lad when he suddenly came rushing over in the next moment. Given how he was able to escape from right beneath Elder Wuheng's nose, he must possess some kind of extraordinary technique. Later on, I'll try to sound him out to see if things are really as Elder Wuheng made them out to be. If it's proven true, I want you to quickly control the formation in this room so as to prevent him from getting away, alright? Zhongxi sent a telepathic message to Elder Ge. Elder Ge quickly nodded in response. After swiftly sorting out their plans, Zhongxi spoke up with a slightly louder voice. "Please enter, Jia." The door opened, and Zhongxian walked in. "Zhongxi, Elder Ge." Zhongxian was slightly surprised to see that Elder Ge was around as well, but he did not neglect to greet the latter. After trading some pleasantries, Zhongxi looked at Zhongxian intently and asked, "May I know the reason behind your late-night visit? I am currently studying 9-star formations, and I am having some trouble procuring grade 9 formation flags to test out a formation. I heard that Zhongxi is adept in formations, so I came over hoping to get some from you. If it's required, I don't mind paying any price to purchase them, Zhongxian said. Grade 9 formations flags. I do have some with me, and if Zhongshe really needs them, it's not a problem for me to give them to you either. Just that. Zhongshe directed a doubtful look toward Zhongxian before continuing. Grade 9 formations require some degree of spatial manipulation in order to set up, so they are exceptionally difficult to construct. Considering Zhongshe's current cultivation realm, you should still be unable to utilize them, right? Grade 9 formations exploited the secrets of space, allowing the formation master to create spaces that were entirely isolated from the environment, thus granting a larger variety of effects. In order to be able to set up even the simplest grade 9 formation, one's cultivation had to be at Saint 9 Dan at the very minimum. Zhongshe had studied grade 9 formations for over 100 years now, but even so, it was highly difficult for him to set up the most basic of grade 9 formations. Considering how the young man before him had only recently cleared his 8-star formation master examination, as well as the fact that his cultivation was still far from reaching Saint 9 Dan, it seemed a little too early for him to start trying to set up grade 9 formations. I just want to try out some of my theories that I thought of in a moment of inspiration. I'm not expecting immediate success, Zhongxian replied with a smile. While he did learn Heaven's Path teleportation formation art, due to the limitations of his cultivation and a complete lack of experience in the field of teleportation formations, he was not so naive as to think that he would be able to succeed on the first attempt. At the very least, he felt that it would take 2 or 3 tries before he succeeded. It's always good to explore new things. Thinking that Zhongxian was serious about learning and researching, Zhongshe nodded in approval as he picked up his teacup and sipped on it. There are roughly 100 basic grade 9 formations. May I know which one Zhongshe is studying at the moment? As you know, the effects of formation flags can differ greatly due to their properties, and it would be a disaster if the formation flags rebounded on you while you were constructing the formation. Due to the immense power that grade 9 formations wielded, it was important to pay careful attention while treading around it. The slightest mistake could lead to the massive power it harnessed running amok, so at the very least, the preparatory work should be as perfect as it could get so as to avoid a disaster. Regarding that, I intend to set up a teleportation formation, Zhongxian said. Teleportation formation? Taken aback, Zhongshe nearly spurted tea out of his mouth. Looking at Zhongxian as if he was looking at a monster, he exclaimed in shock, teleportation formations are difficult to learn, even by the standards of grade 9 formations. Are you sure that you're going to start with that? Teleportation formations could be further divided into various other levels, such as the transmission of information, long-distance projection of images, teleportation of non-living beings, and last but not least, the teleportation of living beings. Transmission of information was at the most basic level. Those 3-star to 4-star formation masters who specialized in this field would be able to construct them. As for projection of images, that would require a 6-star or 7-star formation master at the minimum. The teleportation of non-living beings was slightly harder, but 8-star formation masters who specialized in that field should be able to pull it off with sufficient effort. And as for the teleportation of living beings, there were simply too many factors that one had to pay attention to, especially since the teleportation conditions had to be carefully controlled so that the person teleporting would not be injured. Even 9-star formation masters would have trouble coping with the many issues that could arise from the construction of a teleportation formation, let alone a phantasmal space realm 8-star formation master like the young man before him. It was just like a person who had not even learned to walk yet was attempting to spread his wings and soar into the sky. Noticing the incredulous look on Zhongshe's face, Zhongxian swiftly explained, I actually possess exceptional sensitivity towards spatial laws, and I have spent quite some time studying the topic. It's because I've met a bottleneck in my studies that I would like to try setting it up so as to verify some of my hypotheses. He could not reveal the existence of the Heaven's Path formation art, so he could only use such vague terms to pass it off. Exceptional sensitivity towards spatial laws. Zhongshe and Elder Ge traded glances before nodding inconspicuously. They had still been harboring some doubts toward the message that they had received from Zhong Wuheng earlier, but considering the conversation about teleportation formations, It might just be true that the young man had teleported back into the Sanctum of Sages to flee from the Zhong clan. This was especially so given Zhong Xian's abrupt arrival. Based on what they knew, the young man should have been in the Zhong clan at that moment, and that was at least a month's journey away from the Sanctum of Sages. Thus, Zhong paused for a brief moment before asking, "Right, didn't you head to the Zhong clan a while back? Did Jian Qinsheng not return with you? I had some urgent matters to attend to, so I came back in advance." "Elder Jian should be coming back very soon," Zhong Xian replied. "Urgent matters? Is this relating to the Zhong clan?" Zhong asked with a frown. Knowing that it would be impossible for him to conceal the conflict with the Zhong clan, Zhong Xian hesitated for a moment before admitting, "I did get into a conflict with the Zhong clan, but I'll resolve it once I manage to clear the urgent matters I have at hand." "It's good that you intend to resolve the conflict with the Zhong clan." Seeing that the matter had been verified, Zhong did not hesitate to take action. "But my apologies, Zhong. I'll need you to remain here for the time being." As he said those words, he waved his hand and swiftly sealed the space in the room. Zhong Xian found his body being locked in place, unable to move in the slightest. Chapter 1484. I am really not free. What do you mean by this? Feeling his entire body being bound in place, as if shackled with heavy chains, Zhong Xian's face darkened. He would have understood it if Zhong had refused to lend him any grade 9 formation flags, but what did the latter mean by making a move on him? "The first elder of the Zhong clan, Zhong Wuheng, has sent a message over, requesting for the Sanctum of Sages to hand you over for wreaking havoc in their territory. I thought that there might be some misunderstandings, but since you have admitted to it, I'm afraid that it's our responsibility to hand you over to the Zhong clan to face the consequences for your actions," Zhong said. "Rest assured though, since you are a student of the Sanctum of Sages, we'll definitely try our best to protect you. It's also with you in mind that we chose such a course of action. The Zhong clan is a behemoth on the Master-Teacher continent, and the longer you drag this matter on, the more unlikely it'll be for you to reconcile with them. You should take this opportunity to resolve the conflict with them once and for all. Elder Ge and I will be helping you by the sidelines." "The first elder of the Zhong clan?" Zhong Xian frowned. "Pardon me, but I still have some matters that I need to attend to, so I don't have time to wait for them to come over." Zhao Yue's life was at stake, so there was no time to be lost. Otherwise, he would not have teleported back using the Sanctum Head token. All in all, he had already wasted more than 10 minutes there. A second wasted meant a second longer Zhao Yue would be danger. If he did not rush, he would regret it for life if something were to really happen to Zhao Yue. Besides, the conflict between him and the Zhong clan was not something that could be resolved with just a couple of words. Zhong might have been the deputy head of the Sanctum of Sages, but even his words would not be strong enough to resolve the situation. Hearing Zhong Xian's obstinate words, Elder Ge harumphed. "That isn't up to you. Whether you like it or not, you will be waiting here obediently till the Zhong clan arrives." As he spoke, he flicked out his wrist and whipped out a rope, which tied Zhong Xian up real tight. "I assure you too that I won't implicate the Sanctum of Sages in the conflict between the Zhong clan and me, and I'll pay a visit to the Zhong clan in the near future to resolve the conflict. For the time being, I really have urgent matters to attend to, so I ask of you two to let me off," Zhong Xian said anxiously. "No matter what kind of urgent matters you have at hand, you won't be going anywhere till the problem with the Zhong clan is resolved," Zhong replied sternly. "Elder Ge, take him down for the moment. I'll inform Elder Wuheng right now to send his men over." "Yes." Elder Ge nodded. With a pull, the rope tied around Zhong Xian immediately tightened, sinking into his flesh. "Since you aren't going to let me off, I'll have to beg your pardon for what I'm about to do." Seeing that the other party had their minds set on sending him over to the Zhong clan, not leaving any room for discussion at all, Zhong Xian knew that it was meaningless for him to say anything else. Shaking his head, he said, "Inferno Chiline, I'll be leaving them to you, Hong Long." The next moment, an Inferno Chiline appeared before everyone's eyes. The moment that it appeared, a powerful burst of flames gushed outward, leaving the room feeling as if it was a furnace. With just a light flick of its hoof, the rope binding Zhong Xian fell to the floor. "Hula!" After cutting the rope, the Inferno Chaline's powerful hoof thrust forward once more. Pang! Pang! Before Zhang Shi and Elder Ge could even react to the situation, they were smashed right into the wall, plastered to it as if a lizard. A powerful impact reverberated through their bodies as fresh blood trickled down their lips. The Inferno Chaline was a Saint 9 Dan pinnacle beast possessing the ancient Chaline bloodline, and it possessed strength far beyond that of ordinary cultivators. While it had sustained considerable damage in its fight with the First Elder earlier, even in its wounded state, it was still an adversary far beyond the means of Zhang Shi and Elder Ge to deal with. Not expecting the young man to bring out such a powerful tamed beast, Zhang Shi's face immediately turned livid. He swiftly tapped on the space ahead of him as he bellowed, "Activate!" Wang! The formation in the room swiftly whirled into action. A powerful pressure crushed down from the surroundings, suppressing the Inferno Chaline tightly. They had planned to use this formation to trap Zhongxian, but it seemed like they would have to deal with this massive fellow before deciding anything. If they allowed the beast to run rampage, it would not be long before the Sanctum of Sages was reduced to dust. Roar! Trapped in the formation, the Inferno Chaline released a furious bellow. It swept its tail forth with formidable force, but its tail was swiftly impeded with spatial ripples in the air. The formation in the Sanctum Head Hall was something left behind by their ancestors, and its might was not to be underestimated. As powerful as the Inferno Chaline was, it was still unable to struggle free of its restraints in the short term. Capture Zhongxian first. Once we subdue him, his tamed beast won't dare to do anything. Zhang Shi bellowed furiously. Knowing that they would not stand a chance once the Inferno Chaline struggled free from the formation, he immediately rushed forward to grab Zhongxian and hold him hostage. As the saying went, to take down a den of bandits, subdue the chief first. No matter how powerful the Inferno Chaline was, it was still nothing more than a tamed beast. Once its master was taken hostage, there would be nothing that it could do. Humph! It was already enough for him to come under attack from the elders of the Zhong clan, but to think that even the elders of the Sanctum of Sages would be so eager to apprehend him. With an ireful wave of his hand, he commanded coldly, "Take down those two fellows." Who? The next moment, the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast materialized and grabbed forward. Peng! Peng! Zhang Shi and Elder Ge were swiftly sent flying once more. Saint 9 Dan? Wasn't it at Saint 8 Dan Pinnacle just a month ago? Elder Ge widened his eyes in horror. He had experienced the frightening strength of the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast once before, but back then, it had only been at Saint 8 Dan Pinnacle. How did it manage to make a breakthrough in just a single month? There was a nearly unbridgeable rift between Saint 8 Dan and Saint 9 Dan. This final step was one that was exceptionally difficult to make, but once a cultivator managed to pass the threshold, their fighting prowess would be at a whole new level. Elder Ge was not the only one shocked. Zhang Shi also felt as if his head was exploding, as if he was going mad. It was already a shocker to see that Zhongxian had a Saint 9 Dan beast with him, but to bring out two at once, just how in the world did he tame those beasts? It was no wonder he could wreak havoc in the Zhong clan and still manage to get away scot-free. With just these two saint beasts, it would be difficult for the ordinary guards of the Zhong clan to stop him. Hold it right there. However, knowing that this was not the time to be shocked, Zhang Shi flicked his wrist and wielded his sword. With just a simple slash, a barrage of sword chi had already burst forth, sealing the movements of the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast. It was initially planning on charging forth to continue the pummeling, but under the onslaught of sword chi heading its way, it could only stop and defend against it for the time being. The Netherworld Azure Dragon beast had only reached Saint 9 Dan recently, whereas Zhang Shi had already been in this realm for many years. Not to mention, he even wielded his sword and used a battle technique, so the fight ended in a stalemate for the time being. Don't bother too much with them, help the Inferno Chaline break free of the formation first. Strike there. Knowing that the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast was at a disadvantage strength-wise, Zhongxian quickly issued an instruction while pointing to a certain location in the room. Knowing the severity of the situation, the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast also hurriedly rammed its way toward the area that Zhongxian had pointed out, and with a powerful whip of its tail, it struck the spot with absolute precision. Catcher! A crisp echo sounded in the air, followed by intense tremors. The trapped Inferno Cheline swiftly tore free of the formation, and at the same time, the Sanctum Head Hall succumbed to the pressure and began collapsing. As soon as it was free from its restraints, the Inferno Cheline immediately launched a vicious counterattack, as if to cleanse itself of the humiliation that it had just suffered. With a ferocious roar, it rammed right through Jean-Che's defensive swordsmanship, and raising its hoof, it thrust it down forcefully on the two elders. Pardon! Pardon! Jean-Che and Elder Ge hurriedly raised their arms to cushion the blow, but the colossal strength behind the hoof was too much for them to bear. Their backs gradually bent under the astounding might as the creaking of bones sounded in the air, ready to snap at any moment. Saint beasts had always possessed an advantage in terms of strength over cultivators of the same tier. This included even the powerful combat masters, let alone them. Sensing that he was swiftly reaching his limit, Elder Ge bellowed, "Zhongxian, do you know what you are doing? This is the sanctum of sages, the root of countless powerful experts. Do you understand the consequences of laying your hands on a deputy sanctum head and an elder? Don't let your own recklessness compel you to make a decision that you'll regret for life." Chapter 1485 Surrender or Die. Hearing that Elder Ge wanted to pin such a heinous crime on him, Zhongxian could not help but scoff on the inside. Nevertheless, he still waved his hand and ordered, "Inferno Cheline, stop." As awful as Elder Ge's words sounded, they also made sense. The Sanctum of Sages was the highest academy on the Master-Teacher continent. Even though its standing was not on par with the Master-Teacher Pavilion, and its strength had declined over time, its prestige and rallying power were still not to be underestimated. In the first place, making a move on the incumbent deputy sanctum head and an elder could already be considered an extremely contemptible action. If it were to be known that he had severely wounded or even killed them, he could be making himself an enemy of the entire upper echelon of the Master-Teacher continent. Roar. Upon hearing the command, as infuriated as the Inferno Cheline was, it did not dare go against Zhongxian's order. Thus, it reluctantly retracted its hoof and backed off. Jean-Che and Elder Ge heaved a deep sigh of relief. It was only at this moment that they suddenly realized that their robes were completely soaked in sweat. Had the Inferno Cheline continued its attack, even if they walked out of there alive, they could have ended up being crippled for life. Taking a deep breath, Zhongxian suppressed his emotions before stepping forward and clasping his fist. "It's not my intention to make a move on the two of you. However, I really do have urgent matters to attend to, and I can't afford to waste any time. I beg your pardon for this." He was deeply displeased by Jean-Che and Elder Ge's actions, but this was not the time for him to fall out completely with them. The Zhong clan was already on his back, he did not need to add the Sanctum of Sages into his list of pursuers. Jean-Che shot a slightly apprehensive glance at the Inferno Cheline before harumphing coldly. Humph. He felt infuriated inside, but there was no way he could vent his rage. All along, he had viewed Zhongxian as someone who was within his control, but who would have thought that in a month of absence, the other party had already become a dragon soaring in the sky, far beyond his reach. "Allow me to reassure you that I'll personally resolve the unhappiness with the Zhong clan in the near future, so there's no need to worry about that. The reason I'm here today is to borrow the 9-star formation flags, and I hope that Jean-Che can grant my requests," Zhongxian said. Jean-Che looked at Zhongxian deeply for a long moment before sighing deeply and saying, "Very well then, I'll take your word for it. I hope that you won't let me down." Following which, he flicked his wrist and took out over 100 formation flags. Every single one of them was made of a particularly resilient material. It was clear that they were all high-tier, Grade 9 formation flags. With the Inferno Cheline and the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast watching from the side, Jean-Che felt that Zhongxian would order his tamed beast to snatch the formation flags from him by force if he refused. Rather than suffer for nothing, he thought that it would be wiser to hand them over first. "Thank you, Jean-Che." Zhongxian took the formation flags and examined them closely. After verifying that these formation flags were indeed suited for the construction of teleportation formations, he heaved a sigh of relief before turning his head toward the collapsed doorway. "Come in. It was only upon hearing Zhong Xian's words that Zhong Shi and Elder Ji realized that there was someone standing by the doorway. She was the genius from the Glacier Plain Court who had just enrolled earlier in the year, Chen Liao. At that moment, the young lady was staring at the rubble lying around the place with widened eyes. When she caught sight of the trail of blood trickling down from Zhong Shi and Elder Ji's lips, she could not help but clasp her agape mouth in shock. They were only there to borrow formation flags, not to raid the place. Was it really necessary to go so far? How were they supposed to resolve the situation peacefully now that such a situation had happened? However, she also knew that it was meaningless to think too much about it now. What was done was done. Thus, she quickly walked over to Zhong Xian. Paying no heed to Chen Liao's shock, Zhong Xian hurriedly sent a telepathic message over. Tell me the exact location of the Glacier Plain Court. Without any hesitation, Chen Liao quickly informed Zhong Xian of the exact location of the Glacier Plain Court telepathically. It's located in the extreme north. Got it. After hearing the location from Chen Liao, a map swiftly surfaced in Zhong Xian's mind as he quickly gauged the distance and direction of the destination from the Sanctum of Sages. When setting up a teleportation formation, especially for ones with intended destinations as far as the one that Zhong Xian was going to set up, there could be no mistake in the direction at all. Otherwise, even the slightest degree of deviation in the calibration could possibly result in the result being off by countless li. After calculating for roughly 5 minutes, Zhong Xian exhaled deeply in relief before flicking his fingers. The formation flags that he was holding with his other hand immediately flew all over the place. As soon as they took their places, energy ripples began diffusing into the surroundings, forging a rather stable folded space. However, before it could fully take shape, it abruptly exploded. First attempt, fail. My strength is still insufficient. Sensing that single attempt had taken away half of his total zhenqi, Zhong Xian shook his head helplessly. There was no mistake in his setting up of the formation flags and manipulation of energy earlier. In fact, the reason behind his failure was not because he had made any mistake but because he was not able to supply sufficient energy for the creation of the formation. With his phantasmal space realm pinnacle cultivation, heaven's path zhenqi, and deep comprehension of space, his fighting prowess was at least on par with dimension-sundering realm pinnacle experts. However, it was still insufficient for him to construct a teleportation formation. Now, while Zhong Xian was still deliberating over what alternatives he could use in order to resolve the lack of energy, he suddenly heard a bellow from behind him. The next moment, Zhong Shi and Elder Ji charged forward simultaneously. The cold shimmer of a sword flashed across the room, freeing the two of them of the Inferno Chaline's control. Following which, the two of them swiftly fled into the air. The Inferno Chaline and the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast had been so focused on their master that they were caught off guard by the duo's abrupt movements. They had to block their attacks in a fluster, so they failed to keep them from getting away. In the sky, Zhong Shi flicked his wrist and whipped out a token. Following which, with a resounding voice that echoed clearly to the corners of the Sanctum of Sages, he declared, "All elders of the Sanctum of Sages, hear my word. Zhong Xian and his tamed beasts have audaciously made a move against me and Elder Ji, so I hereby declare him to be an enemy of the Sanctum of Sages. All of you are to immediately move out and apprehend him, and should he try to retaliate, you are permitted to take extreme actions, even at the cost of his life. As the deputy Sanctum head, he could be considered the face of the Sanctum of Sages. Even if his pride could take it lying, he could not allow the long history of the Sanctum of Sages to be besmirched in his hand." Hong Long. As soon as the decree was passed, a huge commotion broke out within the Sanctum of Sages. Countless figures emerged in the air, easily numbering in the tens of thousands. Earlier, during the battle with the Inferno Chaline, Zhong Xian had known that things could turn out bad if people started gathering there, so he had discreetly set up an isolation formation in the room in order to prevent any sound from getting out. As a result of that, despite the entire room collapsing, it had not caught anyone's attention. However, the decree that had just been passed had reached the ears of every single elder and student in the Sanctum of Sages, so they swiftly flew up in order to see what was happening. "This is bad. Inferno Chaline, hurry up and knock him down," Not expecting Zhonshi to suddenly act in such a way, Zhongxian's face darkened. He hurriedly ordered the Inferno Cheline to make a move. Roar! With a furious roar, the Inferno Cheline dashed into the sky and raised its hoof, preparing to knock Zhonshi down back onto the ground. Guardian formation. Grasping the Deputy Sanctum Head token in his hands tightly, Zhonshi swiftly activated the power in it, and a blinding burst of light suddenly flashed into the surroundings, seemingly communicating with a dormant ancient power in the Sanctum of Sages. The surrounding space suddenly seemed to have been frozen solid, such that even the Inferno Cheline ended up freezing in place, unable to move in the slightest. Guardian formation? Zhongxian narrowed his eyes. The Sanctum of Sages had declined considerably over the years. The lack of a legitimate Sanctum Head had resulted in its inability to draw in and retain talents, resulting in an endless spiral of weakness. As a result, even the strongest expert within its ranks at the moment was only at Saint 9 Dan primary stage. However, this had not always been the case. There was a period of time when the Sanctum of Sages had stood at the very peak of the Master-Teacher continent, second only to the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters. After all, every single true Sanctum Head had possessed the Eye of Insight and was an expert that had exceeded Saint 9 Dan, reaching a realm unthinkable to most. Even the First Elder would amount to nothing much before their eyes. The Guardian formation that they had left behind was the ultimate trump card of the Sanctum of Sages. Even if the Zhong clan dispatched all of its forces over, it was questionable whether they would be able to breach it or not, let alone a mere Inferno Cheline. It was also for this reason that the Sanctum of Sages had been able to remain standing even after all these years, retaining its prestige. Otherwise, given the weakness of the current Deputy Sanctum Head, they would have been destroyed by the otherworldly demonic tribe long ago. Sensing the despairing power of the formation, the Inferno Cheline anxiously sent a telepathic message over to Zhongxian. Master, I'm unable to breach this formation. At this rate, we might all lose our lives here. TZZZZZZZ. While the formation was trapping the Inferno Cheline, the other elders of the Sanctum of Sages also made their way over, and they swiftly took their positions behind Zhonshi. Zhongxian, surrender now or die, Zhonshi said impassively as he gazed down upon the young man below him with utterly cold eyes. Chapter 1486 Grand Formation of the Sages. Ever since the founding of the Sanctum of Sages many millenniums ago, this was the very first time that a student had laid their hands on the Deputy Sanctum Head, as well as the first time that someone had utterly destroyed the Sanctum Head Hall. If something like that could be pardoned easily, how would the Deputy Sanctum Head and the elders keep students in line in the future? Zhongshi, what do we do now? Seeing the huge array of elders and students floating above them and the Guardian formation sealing the space around them, Chen Liao's face paled in fright as she trembled uncontrollably. Even though she had been through many battles as a genius of the Glacier Plain Court, this was her first time facing something as huge as this. To stand single-handedly against the entire Sanctum of Sages, this was unprecedented in history. What else can we do? Once we are caught, it will be impossible for us to save Zhao Ya. Zhongxian shook his head. The situation with Zhao Ya was far more urgent, so he could not afford to waste any time there. Not to mention, just by looking at the faces of Zhonshi and the others, it was apparent that he would be done in for good if he was captured. Thus, he could not surrender. Otherwise, there would be no second chance for him. Until he had met all three conditions, he could not show the Sanctum Head token to the others, or else it would be considered forfeiting his right to succession. This was the rule that Sage Kuei had imposed to ensure that each generation of Sanctum Head truly possessed the capability to lead the Sanctum of Sages to greater heights. As such, it seemed like he had no choice but to fight it out. Understanding this, Zhongxian turned his gaze to the already activated Guardian formation and uttered softly, "Flaws." Following which, a book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. Tapping on it lightly, the knowledge within it swiftly flowed into his mind. Heaven-weaving formation, Grade 9 Pinnacle formation. Truly formidable. The Guardian formation of the Sanctum of Sages had been left behind by Sage Kuei, and it had been enhanced by many Sanctum Heads over the years. Every single generation of true Sanctum Head possessed the Eye of Insight, which allowed them to easily pick out flaws and resolve them. After many millenniums of improvement, the formation could already be considered as the crystallization of the wisdom of the top experts of the master-teacher continent. Of course, it still could not be considered flawless in the eyes of the absolute library of Heaven's Path yet, but it was very close to that. Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up. Only 7 flaws. This must be the fewest flaws I've seen among higher-grade formations. But no matter how few flaws were in the Guardian formation, that did not make the slightest difference to what Zhong Xian was about to do. Inferno Cheline and Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, I'll be counting on the two of you to defend against the lot of them and break this formation. I need to continue studying the teleportation formation. Exhaling deeply, Zhong Xian sent the information regarding the flaws of the heaven-weaving formation over to the 2 saint beasts via their telepathic link. Roar. Upon receiving the message, the 2 saint beasts roared furiously. They had already known that their master possessed extraordinary eyes at seeing things despite his young age, but who would have thought that he would actually be able to find so many flaws in a formation that was completely unfathomable to them? Alone, these flaws might not amount to much, but when put together, they were confident that they would be able to shake its foundations. On the other hand, seeing that Zhong Xian was still busy examining the formation flags despite the warning that he had issued, Zhonsha narrowed his eyes threateningly. Zhong Xian, I acknowledge the strength of your tamed beasts, but before the Guardian formation, they are nothing at all. I advise you take a good look at your current circumstances before making a decision. Roar. But before he could finish his words, the Inferno Cheline abruptly broke free of its restraints, and with a deafening bellow, it thrust its massive hoof in a certain direction. At the same time, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast glided along the ground as it dashed right into a certain building not too far away. The core reason behind the strength of the Guardian formation lay in the fortuitous aura that the Sanctum of Sages had accumulated over the many years, as well as the spiritual energy that had gathered in the area through the earth veins below. The Inferno Cheline struck at one of the center points of the formation, whereas the Netherworld Azure Dagon Beast crashed right into a spot where the spiritual energy drawn in through the earth veins accumulated, causing the spiritual energy to dissipate into the surroundings immediately. With 2 critical strikes on its vitals, the incredibly powerful heaven-weaving formation swiftly deflated as if a balloon leaking air, losing the imposing might that it had commanded just a moment ago. Hong Long. The energy that had frozen the surroundings earlier spurted out, falling right upon Zhong Shu and the others. This is impossible, Zhong Shu uttered with his eyes widened in disbelief. In the past several millenniums, the otherworldly demonic tribe had attempted to attack the Sanctum of Sages 13 times, but each and every single time, they had ended up fleeing without achieving anything. While it would be too much of an exaggeration to say that the heaven-weaving formation was unbreachable, still, there were few experts in the world who were capable of overcoming it. And yet, those 2 saint beasts actually deciphered it so easily. How in the world did they manage to do it? Stop them. Knowing that there was no use getting nervous, the person in the air flicked his wrist and thrust his palm downward. Saint Pinnacle Battle Technique, River Flipping Palm. This was a move created by the 4th Sanctum Head. It was a strike that descended from the heavens, wielding strength far beyond one's imagination. Augmented by the fortuitous energy that was billowing out from the ground, this technique could strike down even a Saint 9 Dan intermediate stage cultivator in a single blow. Unfortunately, his opponent was no Saint 9 Dan intermediate stage cultivator but the Inferno Cheline. Paying completely no heed to the palm, the Inferno Cheline simply charged right into it, as if it was no threat at all. Hong Long. The palm fell on the Inferno Cheline's head, but as if striking a Saint Pinnacle artifact, it simply jolted Zhong Shu's palm numb. The next moment, its head crashed right into Zhong Shu's chest, forcefully pushing him away. Su. Zhong Shu's figure was sent flying, surging into the distance as if a shooting star. Zhong Shu. Not expecting the Inferno Cheline to be so powerful, Elder GE and the others hurriedly put their might together and charged forward to suppress it. In response to their aggression, the Inferno Cheline roared furiously, and in the blink of an eye, its figure had already expanded to roughly 40 meters tall. With this towering physique, it rammed right toward the group of elders. Huala. TZZZZZZ. Elder Ge and the other elders were simultaneously knocked flying, and their brows and hair were charred black. What was truly fearsome about the Inferno Chileen was not its hooves or tail but its body. Tempered day and night by the Chileen flames, its body had grown to become as strong as a Saint Pinnacle artifact. Its ram would render even a Saint Nine Dan cultivator powerless, let alone those elders. Is that really Zhongsha's tamed beast? How could it be so powerful? To outright defy and even utilize violence against the Deputy Sanctum Head and the elders, does Zhongsha intend to betray the Master-Teacher Pavilion? The students that had gathered around to spectate the sight were all flabbergasted by what they were seeing. In their eyes, the Deputy Sanctum Head, Elder Ge, and the others were figures far out of their league, perhaps invincible even. Seeing these figures standing completely helpless before a saint beast was something that they never could have dreamed of, and it seemed to shatter all of their previous notions of greatness of these elders. But more important than that, to make a move against the elders of the Sanctum of Sages could already be considered an act of defiance against the authority of the Master-Teacher Pavilion. No matter what, the Sanctum of Sages was still a subsidiary of the Master-Teacher Pavilion and was protected by it. Did Zhongxian no longer want to remain as a master teacher? Damn it, damn it. While spurting large mouthfuls of blood, Zhongsha flew back to the Sanctum of Sages from the distance, and before reaching the area, he bellowed furiously, "Elders of the Sanctum of Sages, heed my command. Form the formations of the sages and subdue the Inferno Chileen together." Seeing how the Guardian formation had been destroyed and the elders were falling from the sky one after another, Zhongsha could not take it any longer. If he did not punish Zhongxian, the entire Sanctum of Sages would become a joke. As the Deputy Sanctum Head, he could not allow the legacy of the organization to be destroyed under his leadership. Yes, the elders replied resoundingly. Following which, they swiftly scattered around to get into their positions. Putting their strength together, they formed something that resembled a fishnet in the air. It's the formation of the sages. Chen Liao's face paled in fright as she hurriedly turned to the young man before her, who was still busy trying to figure out how to make the teleportation formation work. "Zhongsha, this isn't good. Run." Chapter 1487. We're leaving. Other than the Guardian formation, the next strongest trump card of the Sanctum of Sages was the formation of the sages formed by the elders. This formation allowed all of the elders to channel their powers together to launch a devastating attack, thus making it a highly fearsome weapon. Putting aside Zhongxian, even the Saint Nine Dan beast might not necessarily be a match against the formation of the sages. Kuala. Before Chen Liao could finish her words, the net in the sky had already finished forming, sealing the entire area. Roar. Sensing danger from the newly formed net, the Inferno Chileen roared ferociously and charged right for it, intending to ram it down before it stabilized. Kuala. The net that extended across the entire sky formed a massive network of zhunqi. It gathered together under Zhongsha's manipulation, instantaneously forming a pulse of energy that raced right for the charging Inferno Chileen. Boom. As if a forlorn boat drifting in the stormy oceans, the Inferno Chileen swiftly found itself overwhelmed by the tremendous might in the pulse. The pulse shoved it right into the ground, raising a huge cloud of dust above it. Roar. The Inferno Chileen bellowed angrily as it struggled desperately against the raging pulse battering on it, but it was unable to break free of it at all. While most of the elders hadn't reached Saint Nine Dan, their combined prowess, which was further augmented by the unique energy seeping out of the Sanctum of Sages, still formed a force which even the Saint Nine Dan Pinnacle Inferno Chileen was unable to match. It was only after a massive pit had been blasted in the ground did the pulse finally slow to a halt. The Inferno Chileen spurted a mouthful of golden blood as it attempted to return to its feet, only to find itself too wounded to stand. Seeing that they had finally managed to down the Inferno Chileen, Zhongsha swiftly turned his gaze coldly toward another direction as he prepared the formation for another attack. Kuala. Another white pulse of energy burst forth, headed in the direction where Zhongxian was standing. In terms of might, it was far stronger than the one which had struck the Inferno Chileen earlier. If it were to really strike Zhongxian, he would die without any doubt. Master. The alarmed Netherworld Azure Dragon beast immediately dashed back, but it was still a step too late. Before it could reach its master, the white pulse of energy had already swallowed the young man whole. Zhong Xian. Not too far away, Chen Liao watched the sight in utter shock. A sudden feeling of weakness consumed her legs as she fell onto the ground, paralyzed. From where she stood, she could clearly feel the energy pulsating from the attack. It was a force which even her teacher, a Saint 8 Dan pinnacle expert, wouldn't be able to withstand. Would the young man really die like that? He actually didn't dodge. Up in the sky, Zhonsha couldn't help but freeze in astonishment as well. While the attacks launched by the formation of the sages were incredibly powerful, they needed considerable time to charge up. He had expected Zhong Xian to flee before the attack fell, and he was banking on the shockwaves of the pulse to incapacitate that fellow instead. But who could have thought that that fellow would remain rooted to the spot, allowing the pulse to strike directly on him? He deserves it. Given the heinous deeds he has committed, destroying the Guardian formation and tearing down the Sanctum Head Hall, not even Yang Shi would be able to speak on his behalf. Elder Ge harumphed as he discreetly shot a glance toward Zhonsha. He knew that the latter was still harboring some reservations toward this matter. After all, Zhong Xian was Yang Xian's direct disciple, and it was hard to tell what that legendary man would do once he heard of this matter. However, they couldn't be blamed for this matter either. There are many students here who could testify that the actions that they had made were out of self-defense. To actually dare to run rampant just because he had tamed a strong beast, that fellow deserved to meet with such an outcome. I'm not worried about that. It's just that it's saddening to see someone as talented as him passing away just like that. Zhonsha shook his head. As high as Yang Shi's standing was on the master-teacher continent, he was still a person who respected the rules. Considering the actions that Zhong Xian had done, there was no way Yang Shi could still side with his direct disciple. But that young man was truly extraordinarily talented. It was a huge loss for mankind to lose such a talent. Given that fellow's character, his talents would only eventually become a huge scourge to humanity. Elder Ge harumphed. What was the use of being talented? If he were to devote his capabilities to doing evil, his talent would only turn out to be a bane for mankind. In the history of the master-teacher continent, there was no lack of talented geniuses who ended up straying from the right path due to their difficult temperament. I guess you're right. Zhonsha shook his head, deciding not to think too much into it anymore. Clear up the place. We have to report this matter to the master-teacher pavilion headquarters as soon as possible. Yes. Elder Ge replied. He lowered his head to look at the rubble below when he suddenly caught sight of something that made his eyes narrow in shock. He nearly lost control of himself and plummeted to the ground. What's wrong? Zhonsha frowned. Zhonsha, look. Not knowing how he should explain the matter, Elder Ge anxiously exclaimed as he pointed to the ground. In a huge pit in the ground where the energy pulse had struck previously, Zhong Xian stood completely unharmed. There were dozens of formation flags planted in front of him, and light was shimmering off their surface. The space around the pit was rippling a little, emanating warm energy. That's teleportation formation. He managed to construct it. There was no mistaking it, the formation constructed by those formation flags was definitely a teleportation formation. Not only so, the space around the formation was considerably stable, which meant that there wasn't the slightest mistake in the construction. It was one thing for a mere phantasmal space realm cultivator to emerge completely unharmed under the attack of the formation of the sages, but to successfully construct a teleportation formation in the meantime as well. Was this for real? Inferno Cheline, Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, and Chen Liao, come over. We're leaving. The young man in the pit chuckled softly before turning his gaze to the sky. Zhonsha and fellow elders of the Sanctum of Sages, I really have to thank you all for your energy. Otherwise, God knows how long it would take for me to finish this formation. Alright, I still have things to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave first. Let's meet again in the future. After saying those words, Zhong Xian waved his hand and kept his two saint beasts into the myriad anthive nest. At the same time, he quickly grabbed Chen Liao and wrapped her in his zhenqi before activating the teleportation formation. A brilliant light shrouded the both of them, and they immediately vanished from the spot. Don't let him get away. Dumbfounded by the sight before him, it took some time before Zhongshe could think once more. He shouted angrily as he dashed right for the teleportation formation, intending to head into it as well so as to chase Zhongxian. However, just as he was getting close, he suddenly noticed a surge of energy swiftly swelling up in the formation, reminiscent of a full dam that was on the verge of collapsing. Following which, boom! In the next moment, the formation abruptly collapsed. Dozens of formation flags were rooted off the ground and swept into the surroundings, causing the teleportation formation to vanish altogether. Everything happened so swiftly that it was almost as if the formation hadn't appeared in the first place at all. The teleportation formation he created has a self-destruction sequence too. Zhongshe felt as if his sanity was on the verge of crumbling. Naturally, he was a skilled formation master himself, or else he wouldn't have grade 9 formation flags in his possession. For the young man to be able to create a teleportation formation under their attack and even embed a self-destruction sequence with it. Wasn't he able to do a little too much within too short a period of time? With the destruction of the teleportation formation, there was no way they would be able to figure out where he had been teleported to and chase after him anymore. They had lost their only lead to the young man. Glancing at the rubble all around him, Zhongshe's eyes turned wintry. That fellow's escape will eventually culminate into a catastrophe for mankind. Elders and students of the Sanctum of Sages, hear my command. From this day onward, if anyone were to catch sight of Zhongxian, report upward without any delay. If there's a chance to strike, kill him without any hesitation. Chapter 1488 City of Glacier Hula. Amid intense wobbling, Zhongxian crashed down onto the floor and spurted a mouthful of blood. Just like the previous time around, he felt his entire body aching as if it had been ripped apart many times over. Multiple lacerations could be seen all over his body. In truth, with his current strength, it should have been impossible for him to construct a teleportation formation. However, knowing that the matter with Zhao Wei could not be delayed, he could only take a gamble and face Zhongshe and the other elders' attack face-on, hoping to successfully redirect the force into the formation to activate it. Fortunately, things did work out as planned. The combined might of the elders of the Sanctum of Sages formed a surge of energy that even the Saint Nine Dan Pinnacle Inferno Cheline was unable to withstand. With such immense power being infused into the formation immediately received sufficient energy to be activated. It was with this that Zhongxian managed to flee from that dire situation. But while the activation of the teleportation formation was a success, he also sustained unprecedentedly severe injuries in the midst of carrying out his plan. Putting aside the severe vertigo caused by the long-distance teleportation, just the redirection of the elder's attack was more than sufficient to make his innards churn around, inflicting grievous internal injuries on him. Furthermore, while he did redirect the attack away from him, lingering shockwaves from it still managed to slip into his body, gnawing at him from within. Even with the Heaven's Pathshanchi, it would be hard for him to recover quickly. Peng! Zhongxian tried to struggle to his feet when he heard another dull thud beside him. Turning his head over, he saw that Chen Liao had fallen beside him. Her injuries were astonishingly more severe than his. Her body was covered with cuts, and her breathing was very weak. It seemed as if she might stop breathing at any moment. No matter what, she was only at the leaving aperture realm. While the teleportation formation that Zhongxian had created was far more stable than that of other teleportation formation, it still was not something that she was able to endure. In view of this, Zhongxian had tried his best to cover her with a thick layer of his zhenqi so as to protect her during the teleportation, but it seemed like he had still underestimated the strain of the teleportation. He quickly looked at Chen Liao's condition, and after confirming that her injuries were treatable and would not leave behind any permanent issues, he heaved a sigh of relief. What a relief! He slowly stood up, but as soon as he began moving, his injuries relapsed, causing him to spurt 2 mouthfuls of blood. This was probably the worst injury that he had sustained ever since he started cultivating. He struggled his way up to Chen Liao, and with a few flicks of his fingers, he sent several surges of zhenqi into her meridians, mending her wounds. Watching as her complexion gradually improved and her wounds closed up, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief before quickly treating himself. He spent 10 minutes driving his Junchi 3 circulations around his body before the excruciating strain that he felt in his body finally alleviated considerably. While he had not fully recovered yet, he could already move around without much problem. I should stop taking such risks in the future, or else I really might lose my life like that one day, Zhongxian thought. Just thinking of what he had gone through was enough to leave his heart beating in trepidation. Everything turned out well in the end, but had he made the slightest mistake, he could have lost it all then. It was reassuring to see that Lady Luck was still shining down on him. He turned his gaze to look at Chen Liao once more and saw that the latter was still unconscious. Nevertheless, her breathing had steadied considerably, and those glaring wounds from before had already vanished. With a flick of his wrist, he took out a pack of silver needles, and after infusing his junchi into them, he inserted them all over her body. Having read all of the 8-star physician manuals in the Sanctum of Sages, even without using the Library of Heaven's Path, he possessed abilities on par with a 9-star physician. Chen Liao had only fainted due to the trauma from the jolt in the spatial disturbance. With her injuries out of the way, it was not too difficult to rouse her consciousness. As expected, the moment that the silver needles were inserted, Chen Liao's eyebrows fluttered for a moment before she slowly opened her eyes. She was dazed for a moment before she slowly sat up and gazed at her surroundings with a wondrous look on her face, muttering, "I'm still alive." The severe pressure that had pressed down on her during the teleportation had left her feeling as if death was swiftly encroaching on her, and she had never thought that she would survive the ordeal. Hearing Chen Liao's response, Zhongxian chuckled softly. "I'm around. How could I possibly allow you to depart to the other world under my watch?" Then, his tone turned slightly more serious before continuing. "All right, I need you to help me see where we currently are and how far we are from the Glacier Plain Court." Chen Liao nodded as she got to her feet. With a leap, she headed into the sky and scanned her surroundings. A look of disbelief crept onto her face as she exclaimed, "This is the suburbs of the city of Glacier? We managed to get here so quickly." The first experience at teleportation would often leave one with a feeling of spatial and temporal disorientation. Even Zhongxian was no exception to this rule, let alone her. City of Glacier? Hearing that this foreign term, Zhongxian frowned. How far is that from the Glacier Plain Court headquarters? He had strictly followed the directions given by Chen Liao during the construction of the teleportation formation. Could something have gone wrong? Noticing the frown between Zhongxian's brows, Chen Liao quickly clarified, "The Glacier Plain Court headquarters is right within the city of Glacier. There's a sect formation that prevents any outsiders from teleporting right into the city, so the coordinates that I gave you were the suburbs instead. I really didn't think that you would be able to teleport here so accurately. As one of the top powers on the Master-Teacher continent, there was no way it would allow unidentified personnel to teleport straight into their sect. If they had really attempted that, they might have lost their lives before they could even get to the young court chief. However, teleportation formations were known to be highly unstable. Often, the destination tended to diverge from the location set by quite a bit, especially for long-distance teleportation formations. Yet, in the first try, the young man was actually able to calibrate the teleportation formation to the exact spot that she had given. That was something that even 9-star pinnacle formation masters would find it hard to achieve. In fact, 9-star formation masters would usually leave a portal artifact at the destination of their teleportation formation in advance, so that they would be able to lock onto the destination with greater certainty. To be able to achieve such precision with nothing but coordinates and mental calculation, that young man's capability was truly inconceivable. Did he really know nothing about teleportation formations before this and spent just a couple of minutes learning it? Hearing that they were in the vicinity of the Glacier Plain Court headquarters, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. "All right. Since we're here, let's quickly enter the city. We need to find a way to figure out what's happened to Zhao Yuan." Just by how the young man was willing to turn against the entire Sanctum of Sages to save his student, his determination to rescue his student was clear to see. Without wasting any time, Chen Liao immediately flew over to a city wall not too far away. Due to the city of Glacier being occupied by the powerful Glacier Plain Court, despite its eternal frost, it was still one of the largest cities in the master-teacher continent. There were towering walls surrounding the massive city, and perhaps because the night setting in, the city gates were tightly shut, turning away all visitors. However, with her token as one of the inner disciples of the Glacier Plain Court, Chen Liao was still able to gain entry with ease. Snowflakes drifted quietly into the city, adding on to the knee-high piles of snow shoved to the sides of the street. Despite the piercing cold, the streets were still vibrant and lively. Huge crowds milled about the area, and from time to time, there would be a carriage passing by. Chen Liao glanced at Zhongxian and asked, "Zhongshe, shall we head straight into the Glacier Plain Court?" Zhongxian shook his head in response. "Why not?" Chen Liao asked in incomprehension. Was the reason they had gone through so much trouble rushing there not to get to the young court chief as quickly as possible? Why was the other party suddenly backing out after reaching their destination? The important matter at hand is not to enter the Glacier Plain Court but to find out what has happened so as to make preparations in advance. Otherwise, if we slip in carelessly and something goes wrong, not only will we be unable to save her, we might even lose our lives, Zhongxian said with a deep frown on his forehead. What could go wrong in the Glacier Plain Court? Or could it be? Zhongshe, do you mean to say that? Chen Liao was stunned for a moment as realization fell on her like a bucket of ice-cold water. Something bad has happened within the Glacier Plain Court? Chapter 1489. My name is, she had asked close sisters of hers within the Glacier Plain Court about the young court chief, but the replies that she had received all said that nothing had happened. But thinking about it, that did not make sense at all. How could something possibly happen to the young court chief, a person whose standing was only beneath that of the first elder, without anyone noticing? There were only two possibilities to explain this peculiar situation. 1. The young court chief was lying. 2. The crisis happened from within the sect, and someone was intentionally suppressing the news. Thinking about it now, the young court chief should have informed the elders and the experts within the Glacier Plain Court directly in order to deal with the crisis, instead struggling to send a message to trouble her relatively much weaker teacher. After all, that would have been the most rational thing to do. Clearly, it appeared that there was no one she could trust within the Glacier Plain Court. This realization made goosebumps rise all over Chen Liao's body as she shook her head in disbelief. She had only known that the young court chief was facing some kind of danger, but she had not really thought that deeply into the matter before. This also explained why Zhongshe was against having her recklessly contact the Glacier Plain Court. I understand that you are a member of the Glacier Plain Court. If this matter puts you in a spot, I can deal with it myself. However, I still have to ask of you not to reveal my whereabouts to anyone. Zhongxian turned to Chen Liao and clasped his fist. If something had really happened within the Glacier Plain Court, it would indeed be too much to ask of her to choose between him and the Glacier Plain Court. Instead of putting her in a spot, it might be better for her to stay out of this matter altogether. That way, she could at least feign ignorance and steer clear of trouble. Chen Liao was stumped. Her previous realization had also led her to a certain deduction. If it was true that the Glacier Plain Court had turned hostile toward the young court chief, there was only one person who wielded the ability to pull it off, the First Elder. For as long as she could remember, the First Elder had been responsible for managing everything in the Glacier Plain Court. Be it internal or external affairs, everything was decided upon her words. For this reason, even though she was not the court chief, her position was as good as that. If her previous guesses were correct and someone inside had indeed tried to make a move on the young court chief, the culprit was most likely the First Elder herself. No one had the ability to conceal anything happening within the Glacier Plain Court from the First Elder, and if the matter truly had nothing to do with the First Elder, she definitely would have stepped in and saved the young court chief by now. But if the First Elder was truly the culprit, as a disciple of the Glacier Plain Court, could she really disobey her commands? Don't worry, I understand. Farewell. Not wanting to put Chen Liao in a spot, Zhongxian turned around and walked away. However, barely after he took a couple of steps, Chen Liao suddenly rushed over from behind and stopped him. With a resolute look on her face, she said, "Wait a moment. The young court chief is an amiable person, and I am also indebted to Zhongshe. I wish to lend you my aid in rescuing the young court chief, even if this means going against the first elder. Zhongxian looked at Chen Liao deeply and asked, have you thought it through it? This matter could have severe implications. You do understand that there's no turning back from this, right? Chen Liao sighed before nodding grimly. I understand. She had grown up in the Glacier Plain Court, and naturally, she was greatly attached to it. However, the young man before her was the person who had modified the Glacier Plain Court's cultivation technique and saved many of her sisters from meeting a premature death, and the young court chief seemed to be a kind person as well. More than that, she was also deeply in awe at how the young man was willing to stand against the sanctum of sages for the sake of his student. She earnestly hoped to lend him her strength. Very well, allow me to thank you on Zhao Yue's behalf then. Seeing that the other party had made up her mind, Zhongxian nodded. Is there anyone in the Glacier Plain Court whom you are closer with that has a high standing? I think we should start tackling the matter from there. Perhaps, we might be able to find some clues. First and foremost, he would have to uncover what had happened to Zhao Yue before he could start designing some countermeasures. But to hear about matters in the Glacier Plain Court, it went without saying that they would need someone on the inside. Chen Liao pondered for a long while before saying, those who are closer to me are of the younger generation, so I doubt that they will know much about the plight of the young court chief. However, there's a certain elder whom I happen to be closer with. She has always been very caring to me, so I think I could try asking her. Elder? What's her cultivation realm? Zhongxian asked. Saint 8 Dan advanced stage. She isn't too strong among the elders, but she's in charge of managing the basic necessities in the Glacier Plain Court. If something has happened to the young court chief, I think she would know, Chen Liao said. I see. Very well, bring me to meet her. Zhongxian nodded. Even though the elder whom Chen Liao spoke of did not have too high a position, being in charge of the basic necessities, she should have a good grasp over the happenings in there. If something had happened to Zhao Yue, she definitely would have heard of it. Considering how night has set in, I think she should be resting in her accommodation at the moment. However, her accommodation is located in the depths of the Glacier Plain Court, so it might not be easy to slip in at the moment, Chen Liao said with a deep frown. Judging from the time, the Glacier Plain Court would have already closed its gates. As such, it would not be easy for them to get in. Can you invite her out for a meeting? Zhongxian asked. Chen Liao shook her head and replied, it won't be easy. The rules of the Glacier Plain Court are enforced quite strictly. Even though she's an elder, she still won't leave the Glacier Plain Court easily. However, she will head out at dawn to procure fruits, vegetables, and the sort, so we should be able to get to her then. Dawn? Zhongxian frowned. There's still 6 more hours before dawn. Too many things can happen within 6 hours, I can't wait that long. Is there any other way to get to her? Time was of the utmost importance. Until they finally uncovered what had happened to Zhao Yue, they could not waste a single second. Chen Liao fell silent. She had always been one of the more obedient ones in the Glacier Plain Court, so she had no experience of sneaking out at night before. As a result, she found herself completely stumped by Zhongxian's question. The elder you spoke of should have a certain supplier whom she works with in order to procure rations for the Glacier Plain Court, right? As one of the top powers on the master-teacher continent, the Glacier Plain Court only takes in high-quality rations that are cultivated by professionals and contain minimal impurities, Chen Liao said. To be honest, I'm not too sure whom the supplier is, but from what I know, the only supplier in the city of Glacier that has the ability to meet the Glacier Plain Court's needs is the Han clan. They are also the largest clan here. The larger a power was, the more stringent their demand on rations would be. In order to cultivate their younger generation, it was important to pay careful attention to their diet, so they would not simply purchase any food from roadside vendors. Besides, this was also a security issue. Otherwise, if someone laced their vegetables with poison, would the entire organization not be done in? As such, it was certain that they would have a specific supplier. The Han clan. Do you know where they live? Zhongxian asked. Understanding Zhongxian's intention, Chen Liao nodded. Yes, I know where they are. It might be difficult for her to invite the elder out, but if the supplier was the one to do the inviting instead, it should be much easier. Lead the way. Zhongxian nodded. The two of them swiftly strode through several streets, and roughly 10 minutes later, a resplendent manor appeared before their eyes. Zhongshe, this is the Han clan, Chen Liao introduced. Zhongxian nodded as he examined the massive manor before him. To be qualified to supply rations to one of the top powers of the master-teacher continent, the Han clan was certainly quite a powerful clan. Send in a name scroll. Zhongxian waved his hand. It was clearly not viable to barge into the clan. Besides, if he caused a huge commotion, it could cause more trouble than it would be worth. For the time being, it would be best to get the person in charge to meet him willingly. Name scroll? Do I put down my name? Chen Liao was taken aback. While she was indeed one of the more talented disciples in the Glacier Plain Court, the other party was a figure who was able to talk on equal terms with an elder of the Glacier Plain Court. Considering the ungodly hour that they had come knocking, it was not too likely that they would be able to meet the master of the manor. Use my name instead, Zhongxian said. Yours. Chen Liao widened her eyes in astonishment. While Zhongxian was the young court chief's teacher, this was something that was only known by very few members of the Glacier Plain Court, so he did not have much fame. And more importantly, he had just gotten into a conflict with the Sanctum of Sages, so was it not too dangerous to use that name? Pardon me for saying this, Zhongshe, but I don't think your name will work either. However, before she could finish her words, Zhongshe suddenly turned around, and a foreign face came into her sight. The other party had morphed his appearance into that of a middle-aged man with yellowish skin tone. With a perfectly nonchalant expression, he said, "From now on, my name is Yang Xian." Chapter 1490 Han Shuiliu Yang Xian? It took a moment before Chen Liao processed what Zhongxian was saying, and she was nearly scared out of her wits. Why you are going to use Yang Shi's name? Yang Xian, there was no way she could not have heard of this name before. The number one Grand Elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters that carried the reputation of being the number one expert of the Master Teacher continent, he was a figure that most could only look up to, but Zhongxian was going to use his name? Even if he's your teacher, you can't just borrow his name like that, right? This is the only way we can get the head of the Han clan to meet us, Zhongxian said. Given that Zhao Ya is his grand student, he should be fine with it. I guess. Chen Liao was still a little uncertain about this matter. The young man before her was simply too daring. It was one thing to make a move on the elders of the Sanctum of Sages, but to act as his own teacher as well. It would still be fine if he did not get exposed, but if others found out about it, this was a matter that would bring even the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters into the picture. All of a sudden, Chen Liao found herself regretting having agreed to help him. At this rate, there was no telling what kind of mess this brazen man would stir up. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Seeing Chen Liao's expression, Zhongxian could tell what she was worried about, so he waved his hands reassuringly. He was already accustomed to impersonating Yang Xian, and he was confident that he would be able to deal with whatever the other party threw his way. Given the current circumstances, his name would not be of much use. However, if he brought the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters Yang Xian into the picture, he would be able to swiftly get people to do his bidding, and that should allow him to quickly uncover Zhao Ya's whereabouts. In any case, the Real Yang Xian should still be in seclusion in the Zhong clan. Considering how the other party still had not emerged when he left, it was unlikely that the other party would be out anytime soon. Given so, there was nothing for him to worry about. Very well then. Knowing that she was already on board this darned ship and was unable to back down anymore, Chen Liao resignedly took out a scroll and began writing on it. There's no need to write Master Teacher Pavilion. Just the two words, Yang Xian will do. Zhongxian instructed. Very well. Chen Liao was not sure why Zhongxian would make such a request, but she felt that the other party would have his own motive for making such a request, so she took out a new scroll and began writing on it once more. After she was done, she walked up to the door and knocked on it. Jia. A guard opened the door and shot Chen Liao a questioning gaze. Our old master wishes to pay a visit to your master. I ask of you to pass this name scroll to him, Chen Liao said as she passed the scroll over. Look at the time. Our old master is already resting in his room, so if you have any business, please return tomorrow. The guard shook his head, refusing to take the name scroll. At the guard's rejection, Chen Liao flicked her wrist and flashed a token to the guard. I advise you take the name scroll and have your master take a look at it. Should there be any delay in this matter, a mere guard like you won't be able to take responsibility. You are an inner disciple of the Glacier Plain Court? The guard might not know who Yang Xian was, but he could at least recognize the token. Alarmed, he hurriedly accepted the name scroll and said, Please wait here in our main hall for a moment. I'll relay your name scroll to the master. A person whom even an inner disciple of the Glacier Plain Court had to address as old master must at least be the equivalent of an elder at the very least. A guard like him could not afford to offend such a figure. UN. Chen Liao put away her token before walking back to Zhongxian and taking her position behind him. Under the lead of the guard, the two of them slowly made their way into the courtyard and took a seat in the main hall. After preparing some tea for the two guests, the guard quickly rushed over to the clan head's room. Despite the late hour, the clan head had yet to turn in for the night, still busy discussing something with the clan elders. The guard quickly walked into the room and clasped his fist. Master, someone requests your presence. At this hour? Who is it? The head of the Han clan, Han Shuiliu, asked with a frown. This is his name scroll. Not daring to say too much, the guard quickly passed the name scroll over. Han Shuiliu took the name scroll and opened it slowly. There were only 2 words written on it, Yang Xian. Yang Xian? Han Shuiliu was bewildered to see such an uninformative name scroll. What kind of background does that person have? The purpose of a name scroll was to express one's identity to the other party, so he had never seen such a name scroll consisting of just a single name before. The guard pondered for a moment. He's a middle-aged man dressed in a master-teacher robe. He doesn't have an emblem on, so I'm not too sure what his master-teacher rank is. A master-teacher without an emblem? Han Shuiliu was even more perplexed. Master-teachers would usually pin their emblem on their chest to allow others to recognize them. To hand over a name scroll consisting of just a name and not pin his emblem on his chest, and more importantly, to come knocking at such an ungodly hour, just who could that fellow be? He's probably some arrogant brat who came to try his luck. Unable to make sense of the situation, Han Shuiliu placed the name scroll on the table and instructed, Tell him to come again tomorrow morning and send him away. But master, that Yang Shi's subordinate is an inner member of the Glacier Plain Court, the guard quickly said. His subordinate is an inner member of the Glacier Plain Court? Han Shuiliu's expression froze in place. A master teacher, Yang Xian. Could it be? Could it be? As he muttered beneath his breath, his face gradually warped into one of utter shock. Him? Clan head, who are you talking about? One of the elders asked. The other elders who had been conferencing with Han Shuiliu earlier also shot doubtful gazes over. Han Shuiliu turned to the elders and said, if I recall correctly, the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters has a legendary Grand Elder whom few have ever met, and his name happens to be Yang Xian. Could that person be him? Grand Elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters? That's a figure who lives in the clouds, there's no way he would pay a visit to mere mortals like us. The elder shook his head. While their Han clan was of considerable standing in the city of Glacier and wielded considerable influence in the Glacier Plain Court, still, in comparison to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, it was not even worth mentioning. There was no way a Grand Elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters would pay them a visit, let alone hand over a name scroll. The very notion of this was simply too ridiculous to be true. I also don't think that it's likely, but that person is a master teacher and is named Yang Xian. I can't think of another person who fits. Han Shuiliu shook his head. I think you should all come out to greet him with me. It's one thing if he isn't that man, but if he really is and we fail to welcome him properly, our Han clan would be in jeopardy. It was relatively common to see 2 people with the same name on the master teacher continent, but Yang Xian was a rather rare name, and he did not know of another master teacher who went by that name. While he felt that the matter was very unlikely, he did not want to take chances. As a small clan, it was best for them to tread carefully. UN. The other elders nodded as they swiftly followed Han Shuiliu out of the room. Soon, they arrived in the main hall and saw a middle-aged man with slightly yellowish skin sitting by the side, nonchalantly sipping on his tea. As soon as he entered the room, Han Liushui immediately clasped his fist and asked, "May I know if you are Yangshe?" His cultivation had already reached St. 8 Dan pinnacle, but to his astonishment, he was unable to gauge the depths of the other party's cultivation. His aura felt ordinary, but hidden amid the ordinary was a certain vibe that sent shudders running through his heart. It was hard to describe that feeling, but it was like facing a dormant volcano. One might not even pay it a second glance usually, but once it began erupting, it would definitely end with a catastrophe. Even with the combined might of the entire Han clan, Han Shuiliu was not sure if he would be able to stand against him. "I happened to pass by this area, and there were some things that I would like to inquire about. Pardon me for imposing on you at this hour," Zhongxian said as he slowly rose to his feet. It was the same gesture that Han Liushui had done, clasping of fist, but there was a natural air of loftiness in his actions. It was not an intentional action, but it seemed to emanate the air of a lonesome expert. Expert. He must definitely be an expert. Han Liushui narrowed his eyes in shock. Chapter 1491 Three birds with one stone. While the other party had not revealed his exact strength so far, much could be said just by the natural majesty that he commanded. It was clear that he had experienced the vicissitudes of life and braved through countless storms. Even if the other party was not the legendary Yangshe, it was likely that he was of considerable standing, someone a small clan like them could not offend. Understanding this, Han Shuiliu immediately humbled himself and said, "Yangshe, there's no need to stand on ceremony. It's the honor of our Han clan to have you here. May I know what you need to ask of us? As long as it's within the means of our Han clan, we will definitely try our utmost to accomplish it. It's nothing much. I happened to be passing by the area when a saint beast attempted to attack me, so I swiftly subdued it. But in light of the fact that it wasn't an intentional act on its part and that it expressed willingness to submit to me, I decided to treat its injuries. However, I never bring medicine on me during my travels, and I happen to hear that the Han clan has an inventory of medicinal herbs, so I came over hoping to request some," Zhongxian said with a slight smile. "Medicinal herbs?" Han Shuiliu nodded. "May I know what saint beast it is, and what kind of medicinal herbs does it require?" As each saint beast had its own constitution, the medicinal herbs they required to treat the same injury could be different. For one, fire attribute medicinal herbs would be more effective for the Inferno Cheline, whereas the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast would do better with cold attribute medicinal herbs. Only by learning what kind of saint beast they were dealing with would they be able to retrieve the medicinal herb that it required. "It's them," Zhongxian said as he flicked his wrist, and two saint beasts immediately appeared right in the middle of the main hall. As soon as they appeared, a fearsome aura immediately filled the room, leaving one feeling as if the entire main hall would be flipped upside down. St. 9 Dan Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. St. 9 Dan Pinnacle Inferno Cheline. He was actually able to injure those two saint beasts without sustaining any injuries. Seeing the two massive fellows appearing all of a sudden, the room suddenly plunged into silence. The elders of the Han clan began shivering involuntarily out of fear. It was just a moment ago that some of them had felt that the clan head was making a big fuss by coming over to greet the guest personally, but after seeing the two gigantic saint beasts, such thoughts were utterly vanquished from their minds. To be able to wound St. 9 Den beasts so easily, not to mention the utter nonchalance he had when speaking of the matter, as if it was nothing at all, just how powerful was he? Just imagining it was enough to make their guts churn in horror. "I'll require a ruby sun grass, ametyfire flower, green-leafed violet stem, pristine vine. That should be all." After stating roughly a dozen medicinal herbs, Zhongxian shook his head and sighed, "Their injuries are truly regrettable. I failed to control my strength well and accidentally exerted a tenth more, resulting in this unfortunate outcome. It seems like I really should pay careful attention to this in the future." Just by exerting a tenth more strength, he was able to cause this much damage to the two St. 9 Dan beasts. Han Shuiliu gulped unconsciously. He swiftly went through the herbs that the other party had stated, and a moment later, his complexion suddenly turned a little awful. With a slightly hesitant voice, he clasped his fist and said, "Yang Shi, regarding those medicinal herbs. Rest assured. Since I'm asking for them, I'll compensate you according to the market rate," Zhongxian replied with a smile. "That's not what I mean," Han Shuiliu quickly clarified. "Of the medicinal herbs that you have listed, I'm afraid that we can only procure 7 of them. It might be beyond our means to procure the other 8. You can only procure 7 of them?" A frown slowly etched its way onto Zhongxian's brows. It was a subtle gesture, but it fully displayed his displeasure. In an instant, the surrounding air turned viscous, stifling the breath of everyone in the room. A powerful aura that seemed as if it would tear even the world apart abruptly burst forth from the middle-aged man. Jeji. Jeji. Under this suffocating aura, Han Shuiliu and other elders could not stop trembling. It was as if a mountain was sitting on their shoulders, pushing them down onto the ground. "Ah. Pardon me, my thoughts wandered." Just as they were about to reach their limits, the frown on the middle-aged man suddenly cleared, turning back into a slight smile. And just like that, the tempest that they were in vanished altogether, as if the pressure they had felt earlier was just a figment of their imagination. It's fine." As the pressure vanished, Han Shuiliu and the other elders swiftly noticed that their robes were firmly clinging onto their sweat-soaked backs, and they could hardly suppress their shock. "I didn't mean to alarm you. I was just thinking of how inconvenient it would be for these 2 pitiful fellows to recover without the required medicinal herb that I lost control of myself for a moment." Zhongxian shook his head apologetically. As the saying goes, worry provokes mayhem. After experiencing the fearsome might of the middle-aged man, how could Han Shuiliu dare to say no anymore? Gritting his teeth, he said, "Actually, Yang Shi, there might be a way to procure those herbs. Our Han clan might not have them, but the Glacier Plain Court might have them. If you really need them, Yang Shi, I'm willing to inquire on your behalf." Given our Han clan's relationship with the Glacier Plain Court, this shouldn't be too difficult. "Is that so?" Zhongxian shot a glance at Han Shuiliu. "Yes, Yang Shi." Han Shuiliu nodded. "Our Han clan has always been responsible for procuring the rations of the Glacier Plain Court, so we have a close working relationship with Elder Bai. Given our ties, it shouldn't be too difficult to engage her help for this matter. I'll be counting on you, Clan Head Han. I don't mean to urge you, but I require the medicinal herbs as soon as possible. Is it possible for you to contact Elder Bai and have her send the medicinal herbs over right now? While the injuries sustained by these 2 saint beasts might not be too severe, it might leave behind some trauma if their treatment is delayed for too long," Zhongxian said. Of course. That won't be a problem at all. Yang Shi, please give me a moment as I contact Elder Bai right now to have her deliver the medicinal herb." Han Shuiliu swiftly nodded. "Also, I don't like to cause a huge fuss over nothing, so." "I understand. I'll make sure to keep your identity a secret," Han Shuiliu replied before swiftly taking his leave. At the same time, the other elders swiftly got into action as well. They arranged for the other party to take a seat in the most resplendent room in the Han clan and readied their finest tea. How impressive! Watching as everything unfolded before her eyes, Chen Leyao was shocked beyond words. Her red lips remained agape for a very long time. What incredible slyness this was! Through showcasing the Inferno Chiline and the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, not only was he able to fully convince the Han clan of his standing, he was also able to make use of this to utilize the Han clan's connections to gather the medicinal herbs required for their recovery, and more importantly, he even managed to use it as an excuse that was not too abrupt to have them invite Elder Bai over. 3 birds with 1 stone. In comparison, her initial thought of Zhongxian requesting the Han clan to help them contact Elder Bai was truly crude and possibly infeasible. After all, for an unfathomably powerful master teacher to name an elder of the Glacier Plain Court and request to meet her, such an action would surely draw suspicion. And once the news reached the ears of the Glacier Plain Court, it would surely alarm them. By using his tamed beasts as an excuse, he was able to conceal his true intention and achieve his goal without drawing any suspicion. This was truly cunning. Had she not seen Zhongxian altering his appearance, she would have thought that Yang Shi had come in person. While sipping leisurely on the fine tea prepared, roughly 10 minutes later, Han Shuiliu suddenly walked in with a middle-aged lady wearing a hat. Yang Shi, Elder Bai is here. Han Shuiliu swiftly walked forward and clasped his fist. Zhongxian nodded, but just as he was about to speak, the middle-aged lady suddenly frowned as she caught sight of the young lady standing beside him and asked, "Liao, what are you doing here?" Chapter 1492 Earth Vein Lotus. Chen Liao had gone to the Sanctum of Sages. This was something that the entire Glacier Plain Court knew. Why would she suddenly appear here when barely 3 months had passed since then? Elder Bai, I have followed Yang Shi here in order to deal with some matters. Chen Liao swiftly got up and greeted Elder Bai. This was the elder whom she was closest with in the Glacier Plain Court. She didn't wish to lie to her. Yang Shi. At this moment, Elder Bai finally turned her gaze toward Zhongxian. The middle-aged man before her didn't seem to be too old, but his cultivation was like an abyss. She found that she was unable to gauge the depth of his strength. I have heard of many Yang Shis. May I know who you are? Elder Bai frowned in hostility. Chen Liao was one of the disciples which the Glacier Plain Court had devoted its resources to grooming, and yet, instead of cultivating diligently in the Sanctum of Sages, this fellow actually brought her back here. This had made her a little displeased. I am Yang Xian, Zhongxian replied calmly. Yang Xian? Which Yang Xian? Elder Bai replied instinctively when a moment later, her eyebrows shot up as she uttered in astonishment, Master Teacher Pavilion Headquarters Yang Xian? Ha ha ha. Zhongxian didn't respond to Elder Bai's question, choosing to chuckle softly instead. He stood up and said, Elder Bai, you have a glowing complexion, but it seems like you have an energy clot in your Tui High acupoint, resulting in a clash in the searing and cold energies in your body. If I'm not mistaken, the hair beneath your hat has already on the color of snow, am I right? You. Elder Bai widened her eyes in shock. She had always appeared before others with a hat on her head in order to conceal her snowy hair, and even the disciple whom she favored the most, Chen Liao, was unaware of this matter. Yet, the middle-aged man before her was able to see through it with a simple glance. There's no need to get nervous. Execute a punching routine. Paying no heed to Elder Bai's shock, Zhongxian took 2 steps forward as he spoke with a calming voice. Upon hearing those words, Elder Bai's expression suddenly turned dazed for a moment, and before she realized it, she had already executed a punch. Upon realization of what had just happened, her face turned livid in anger and embarrassment, but just as she was about to berate the other party had already begun speaking once more. You have practiced your Arctic arcane art since young, and as you have never come into contact with the opposite gender, guarding the purity of your yin through such, you were able to bring out the full prowess of the cultivation technique. However, have you noticed that you are unable to advance your cultivation by even the slightest bit anymore? No matter how many pills you consume or how many master teachers you consult, you just aren't able to make the breakthrough to macrocosm ascendancy realm. You. How did you know? Horrified by having her secrets exposed by a stranger, Elder Bai couldn't help but take a step back. It had been a long while since she had reached St. Eight Dan Pinnacle, but for some reason, she was simply unable to make a breakthrough to the next realm. She had tried many methods, but all of them turned out to be futile in the end. By now, she had already completely given up hope. Just that, she had only mentioned this matter to the elders whom she was closest with in the Glacier Plain Court, and yet, for a stranger to know of all this as well. Did he really analyze all of this from her punch? Surely there would be no one in the world with such penetrating eyes. Macrocosm in macrocosm ascendancy realm refers to the spatial world we perceive that is formed by the 3 dimensions. In order to grasp the concept of the macrocosm, one must possess a deep understanding of the spatial laws. While the Arctic arcane art is indeed a fairly powerful cultivation technique, it would require one to use frost as a catalyst to induce an impetus for a breakthrough to the macrocosm ascendancy realm, but such a method of breakthrough happens to be incompatible with your disposition. As a result, it caused an uneven distribution of the hot and cold energies in your body, and the strain your body is under has resulted in the premature whitening of your hair. At this point, Zhongxian raised his eyelids and asked, "Do you experience feelings of irritation when you cultivate at night, resulting in your inability to calm down? Does your body experience inner heat seizures from time to time?" Yes, that's true. Elder Bai was intending to refute his words, but after a slight moment of hesitation, she eventually nodded in admittance. With a doubtful look, she asked, "Yangshe, may I know what do you mean by disposition? I have practiced the Arctic arcane art for more than a century now, but nothing has happened in the past. Why would the issue of incompatibility suddenly crop up at this moment?" Since the other party was able to see through the root of her problem, she felt that this could be a good opportunity to resolve this long-term ailment that had put her through great suffering. Thus, she decided not to conceal it anymore. Just that, what the other party had said left her feeling slightly perplexed. She had cultivated the Arctic arcane art for many years now, and never had she faced any problem with it. Why would there be an incompatibility all of a sudden? And also, what did the other party mean by the word disposition? By disposition, I'm referring to the force field that you generate around you. It's something that's affected by the cultivation technique you practice, your personal habits, and even your surrounding. Zhongxian explained. Your constitution harnesses the yin attribute, so it's indeed suited to cultivate the Arctic arcane art. Then, Elder Bai frowned in confusion. Even Chen Liao had no idea what Zhongxian was driving at too. It was just a moment ago that he said that her disposition wasn't compatible with the cultivation technique, so why would he say that her constitution was compatible now? Calm down and allow me to explain. There's indeed no problem with your constitution. The problem lays in the change in your disposition, Zhongxian said. Change in my disposition? Indeed. If I'm not mistaken, after your cultivation reached St. 8 Dan, did you start cultivating a earth vein lotus in your own residence? Zhongxian asked. Yes, that's right. Elder Bai nodded. The seeds of the earth vein lotus does have the effect of eternalizing one's youthful appearance, so it's a popular plant to cultivate amongst the ladies. I can understand why you would want to cultivate one as well, but do you know that the earth vein lotus doesn't just survive by taking in the energy from the earth veins? More than that, it requires the nourishment of earth flames in order to mature. While it only takes in a small flicker, that's already more than sufficient to change the environment you live in, causing the surrounding force field to take on a fire attribute. A day or two wouldn't cause too much harm, but with your Arctic arcane art and cold attribute constitution, a huge problem would arise when you are exposed to such an environment in the long run. The fire attribute will slowly accumulate within your body. If you are married, you might still be able to expel it out, but the act of guarding the purity of your yin has also caused the fire poison to be trapped in your body as well. As a result, when you cultivate the Arctic arcane art, your cold energy would collide with the fire poison accumulated in your body, resulting in your hair taking on a snowy color. At the same time, the clots resulted from the clash causes your zhenqi to be trapped as well. As a result, no matter how you cultivate, you aren't able to achieve a breakthrough. Zhongxian shook his head and sighed deeply. Elder Bai's eyes widened in shock as she staggered weakly backward. She couldn't say for sure whether the other party was right or not, but it was indeed true that there was an earth vein lotus planted in her courtyard, and there were also several clots in her meridians that impeded her flow of zhenqi. Thinking back, her condition also seemed to have started after she began cultivating the lotus. Could the other party be right? What should I do then? Yangshe, please enlighten me. At this point, Elder Bai already harbored no doubts about the capabilities of the middle-aged man before her. Previously, she still thought that it was impossible for that legendary man to come to a place like this, but the very feat that the middle-aged man standing before her had achieved, discerning the root of her ailment with absolute ease, showed that his eye of discernment far surpassed that of common 9-star master teachers. She couldn't fathom anyone else other than that legendary man who would possess such incredible capabilities. Simple. Destroy the earth vein lotus you have planted in your courtyard and soak yourself in the glacier lake for a whole month. Not only will your afflictions be resolved, You'll also have no trouble reaching macrocosm ascendancy realm afterward. At this point, Zhongxian chuckled softly before continuing on. Alternatively, if you aren't able to endure a month in the glacier lake, you can also find a man to reconcile your yin and yang. You should be able to resolve the problem within 3 days. This. Elder Bai's face reddened upon hearing those words, and she hurriedly shook her head. I'll endure a month in the glacier lake. Having lived a life of purity up to this day, she wouldn't break something she had insisted on just because of her affliction, especially when there was an alternative solution. There was a brief moment of silence before Elder Bai spoke up once more. Yang Shi, given your standing and strength, even if your saint beasts are injured, you should be more than capable of treating them without medicinal herbs, right? Besides, even if you require medicinal herbs, you also don't need me to deliver it personally either, right? May I know the reason why you have invited me over in such a roundabout manner? While everything seemed to fit rationally, as an elder of one of the powerful glacier plain court, Elder Bai was highly experienced and worldly. On top of that, the fact that Chen Liao was together with him was a huge anomaly too. Putting all of the clues together, she was able to keenly notice that something was amiss. Chapter 1493 Threa. She was not considered to be too powerful among the elders of the Glacier Plain Court, and under normal circumstances, even till the day of her death, it was highly unlikely for her to come into contact with someone of Yang Shi's level. However, with the fact that Chen Liao was with him and the message that clan head Han Shuiliu had sent over, everything seemed to be pointing toward that direction. Elder Bai is indeed a candid person. Knowing that it was impossible to conceal it anymore, Zhongxian chose to admit to the matter frankly. With a smile, he shot a glance at Han Shuiliu and the other elders of the Han clan and said, "Clan head Han, you have my gratitude for relaying the message. Yang Shi, there's no need to stand on ceremony. It's the Han clan's honor to be able to work on your behalf." Han Shuiliu quickly clasped his fist respectfully. The middle-aged man standing before him was a grand elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. Given that even Elder Bai had acknowledged it, his identity could not possibly be fake. If it were to be known that the Han clan had some ties with Yang Xian, even if it was just a brief contact, its standing could be elevated to a whole new level. For one, its enemies would hesitate to challenge them for fear of retribution from Yang Xian. Yuan Zhongxian nodded before he retracted his smile, looked away, and fell silent. Seeing the look on his face, Han Liushui swiftly understood what was going on and quickly clasped his fist. "There are still a couple of matters that we have to attend to, so we'll be taking our leave now." After saying those words, he left together with the elders. Clearly, the words of thanks that Yang Shi had said earlier were an indirect way of dismissing them. If they did not leave soon, they could very well incur his rage. Soon, only Elder Bai and Chen Liao were left in the room. Turning away, Zhongxian walked over to the main seat and sat down before turning his gaze back to Elder Bai. "Since Elder Bai has already guessed it, I shan't beat around the bush anymore. Zhao Ya is my grand student." There was still no discernible change in his expression, but for some reason, the air around him suddenly grew pressurizing. "The young court chief is Yang Shi's grand student?" Elder Bai was alarmed. Clearly, this was the first time that she had heard of this matter. "Indeed. How has she been doing?" "I wish to hear nothing but the truth," Zhongxian said. "This." Elder Bai's face paled. She was at a loss as to how she should respond to Zhongxian's question. "I received a message saying that she's in danger. Since she's the young court chief of the Glacier Plain Court, I believe you should know the truth very well." As Zhongxian spoke, one could hear his voice growing more and more wintry. He tapped his finger on the table periodically, but as time went by, this seemingly simple gesture seemed to carry a tinge of impatience and even fury to it. "You know my identity. Every move I make represents the will of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. I don't want to cause too much trouble, which is why I chose to come to the Han clan to invite you over. Otherwise, if I were to go straight to your first elder and question her on the matter, I believe there is anyone in this world who would dare snub me." "I." Elder Bai quivered in fear. The very fact that the other party had not taken out his identity token nor marched straight into the Glacier Plain Court was a sign that he intended to resolve this matter discreetly without alarming too many master teachers. Otherwise, given his identity, a single command would be all it took for the Glacier Plain Court to cease to exist. I'll give you some time to think it over, but know that my patience has its limits. If you can't give me the answer I want, the Glacier Plain Court will be my next destination. Someone as intelligent as you should understand what kind of implications will arise from that without having me to explain it. I understand. Elder Bai felt a cold shudder running through her spine upon hearing those words. She hesitated for a brief moment before gritting her teeth in determination. Something did happen to the young court chief. Earlier in the afternoon, the first elder passed a decree commanding the fourth elder, fifth elder, and seventh elder to make a move together in order to suppress and imprison her in the chanting Serenity Hall, not allowing her to leave the area or even communicate with anyone. This matter is the highest secret of our Glacier Plain Court, and not even elders are allowed to speak of the matter, or else, they will be killed without fail. Chanting Serenity Hall? But that's a place where prisoners are locked in. Just what kind of mistake did the young court chief make to deserve such treatment? Chen Liao exclaimed in astonishment. While she had guessed that something might have happened within the Glacier Plain Court, she could still hardly believe her ears when hearing of it from Elder Bai. The chanting Serenity Hall was a place used by the Glacier Plain Court to imprison sinners, and most of those who were placed in there were those who had committed unpardonable crimes. Before she left the place, the young court chief had still been the hope and future of the Glacier Plain Court. So, why would she be imprisoned all of a sudden? Liao, you also know that my identity is rather awkward in the Glacier Plain Court, so I don't really know much about what's happening among the upper echelon within the court. I don't know what kind of mistake the young court chief has made, but it's a fact that the three elders have apprehended the young court chief and bound her in the Heaven Sealing Lock, Elder Bai replied. Heaven Sealing Lock. Zhong Xian's body tensed up upon hearing those three words. He had read a brief introduction about the artifact in a book back in the Sanctum of Sages. The Heaven Sealing Lock was a kind of torture tool used only on the most contemptible of sinners. Not only would the individual's meridians be sealed, preventing them from exerting any strength, they would also have to suffer grievous pain each and every day. Never had he imagined that Zhao Ya would one day be subjected to such a vile torture tool. This was truly intolerable. Feeling the ice-cold aura that the middle-aged man before her was emanating, Elder Bai instinctively cowered backward in fear before quickly adding, Yang Shi, despite what has happened, I ask you to rest assured that there's no threat to the young court chief's life. Just earlier on, the first elder instructed me to prepare some fine dishes to deliver them to the young court chief periodically so as to ensure that she doesn't starve. She had no idea why the first elder would make such a move on the young court chief, but judging from the first elder's attitude, it did not seem like she truly intended to harm the young court chief. Thus, there should not be any threat to the young court chief's life at all. Most likely, it was just some kind of punishment. Bring me to meet her, Zhong Xian ordered with a wintry voice. Meet her. This. A look of hesitation surfaced on Elder Bai's face. The first elder is supervising her imprisonment personally at the moment, and only during mealtimes am I able to get close to her. Otherwise, not even I'll be able to get past the security the first elder has set up. I understand. You just have to bring me to the Glacier Plain Court and direct me to the chanting Serenity Hall, that's all. You don't have to bother about what happens afterward. Zhong Xian waved his hand impatiently. As long as he could uncover where Zhao Ya was, with his ability, he should be able to figure out a way to save her. Of course, he would have to clarify what had happened with Zhao Ya in person first before proceeding with any further action. If it turned out to be some kind of training to temper Zhao Ya's mind and body, no matter how much he doted on her, he would not get in the way. A look of deliberation appeared on Elder Bai's face as she lowered her gaze in uncertainty. Knowing that Elder Bai was worried of the consequences of her action, Zhong Xian coldly added, if you are reluctant to do it, it's fine by me as well. I'll just have to walk into the Glacier Plain Court through the main gates and demand Zhao Ya's release. However, I'm sure you understand the differences between the two courses of action. Elder Bai had truly been put in a tough position. If she brought the other party in, that would be equivalent to betraying the first elder. But if she refused, the other party was a Grand Elder of the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters. If he blew his top, it could bring endless calamity to the Glacier Plain Court. The Glacier Plain Court might even be destroyed. The other party was simply too strong. Even as a lone individual, it was questionable whether the entire Glacier Plain Court would be a match for him. Rest assured, I only want to pay a visit to my grand student so as to clarify the situation. If she has indeed erred, I have no intentions of covering up for her. However, if I find out that the fault lies in the Glacier Plain Court, I might have to pay that so-called first elder of yours a visit and have a good talk with her about revising the rules. Zhong Xian said with narrowed eyes. It was still the same nonchalant voice that he was speaking in, but amid the nonchalance was an unconcealable air of dominance. It felt like the other party would teach the Glacier Plain Court an unforgettable lesson if they had wronged Zhao Ya in the slightest. Hearing those words, Elder Bai could tell that the other party had already made up his mind. Very well. Yangsha, I'll bring you in. This term, chanting serenity, is a reference to the chanting sessions that occur in Buddhist temples. If you have been to a Buddhist ritual, you might have chanced upon monks hitting temple blocks rhythmically while chanting sutras. In this context, the act of chanting is aimed toward soothing the vile thoughts that a person might harbor. Chapter 1494 Glacier Plain Cower. You have my gratitude, Elder Bai. Seeing that the other party had agreed to it, Zhong Xian stood up calmly as he discreetly sent a telepathic message to the young lady behind him. Chen Liao, you are an inner member of the Glacier Plain Court, so it's best for you not to follow me anymore. Also, after I leave, don't linger around in the Han clan. Leave the city first and wait for my notice. Due to Chen Liao's identity, she would be put in a tough position if something happened between him and the Glacier Plain Court afterward. As for getting her to leave the city for the time being, that was on the off chance that his identity was exposed. This way, she would be in a much safer position. I understand. Chen Liao nodded. After issuing those instructions, Zhong Xian had the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast and the Inferno Cheline move back into the Myriad Ant Hive Nest before following Elder Bai out of the Han clan, heading straight toward the Glacier Plain Court. He had already fed the two saint beasts the medicinal herbs that the Han clan and Elder Bai had prepared, and using his Heaven's Pathshanchi in unison with the treatment, they were recovering fast. Nevertheless, it seemed like they would still need 2 to 3 days before they were able to make a full recovery. I should avoid bringing them out unless when I'm truly cornered. In the fight with the first elder of the Zhong clan, the two saint beasts had already sustained considerable injuries. After which, they had clashed with Zhong Shi and the others, and the Inferno Cheline had even suffered the might of the formation of the sages directly. If not for their formidable physical resilience, they would have lost their lives by now. While the Heaven's Pathshanchi could heal all injuries, it was a pity that his cultivation was only at Phantasmal Space Realm Pinnacle, so the effectiveness of his Zhenqi on the wounds of Saint Nindan cultivators was severely limited. Not to mention, the two saint beasts also possessed hulking physiques, so even if he expended all of his Zhenqi on them, he still would not be able to nurse them back to full health. This meant that he should avoid bringing the two of them out unless the situation was truly dire. After flying for a moment, the two of them arrived before a huge cluster of buildings. At this point, Elder Bai turned her gaze over and said, Yangsha, we have arrived at the Glacier Plain Court. It has limited access to outsiders, so I'll have to beg for your pardon in advance. It's fine. Zhong Xian waved his hand as he examined his surroundings quietly. Most of the buildings ahead of him seemed to be made of a crystalline material, and they emanated a faint, forlorn light beneath the starry night sky. White snow drifted amid these crystal buildings, and there were some beautiful ice sculptures that could be seen here and there. It felt as if one had stepped into a world created of snow and ice. That's a relief. Hearing that the middle-aged man did not mind, Elder Bai heaved a sigh of relief. She walked over to the gates, where two disciples of the Glacier Plain Court were stationed. Greetings, Elder Bai. May I know who the person beside you is? Recognizing Elder Bai, The two disciples quickly greeted her before directing doubtful gazes at the unfamiliar face beside. He is Han Chu of the Han clan. He's here to deliver resources, and we happen to have some important matters to discuss too, Elder Bai replied. I see. Hearing that the other party was from the Han clan, the two disciples swiftly opened up the pathway for the both of them to enter. Zhong Xian followed closely behind Elder Bai while advancing forward. An air of serene silence drifted within the glacier plain court. There were not too many people around. After walking for some time, they finally arrived at an independent residence. This is where I live. Given my current authorization, I'm afraid that I can only bring Yangsha up to this point. Even I don't have access to places beyond here, Elder Bai said as she pushed open the door and headed in. It's fine. Zhong Xian nodded. You just have to tell me where the chanting Serenity Hall is. As for the rest, I'll deal with it myself. He had never intended to have Elder Bai lead him straight in. Firstly, that would be putting the latter on the spot, and secondly, the more people there were, the easier they would be spotted. The chanting Serenity Hall is southwest from here, roughly 10 li away. Elder Bai quickly explained the rough location and the appearance of the building. Carefully remembering everything that Elder Bai had said, he headed into a room in the residence and set up a formation around him so as to prevent any outsiders from getting in before drawing his primordial spirit out. The glacier plain court was filled with experts. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to get to Zhao Ya discreetly without alarming anyone, so he could only depend on his primordial spirit. His primordial spirit was formless and intangible, which would allow him to bypass most formations and sentries, thus giving him a better chance of reaching the chanting Serenity Hall safely. However, his primordial spirit was still a little too big at the moment, so he would have to be careful. After leaving the formation that he had constructed, Zhong Xian made sure to stick close to the surface as he discreetly left the residence. Through his deep understanding of formations and the utilization of his Eye of Insight, he was able to bypass the surrounding formations without much problem. He advanced roughly 10 li before a tall building came into his sight. This should be the chanting Serenity Hall. The building before him fitted the description that Elder Bai had given him, so it should be where Zhao Ya was imprisoned. What a formidable formation! Examining the building closely, Zhong Xian swiftly realized that there was an active formation shrouding the building, and if he just looked at it in terms of prowess, it was only slightly beneath that of the Sanctum of Sage's Guardian formation. As formidable as it has far more flaws than the Sanctum of Sage's Guardian formation. It won't be difficult for me to slip past it. In the eyes of others, the powerful formation cast over the chanting Serenity Hall might appear to be unbreachable, but in Zhong Xian's eyes, it was riddled with loopholes. As powerful as it was, there were simply too many ways he could use to circumvent it. He began making his way toward the formation, preparing to slip in, but just as he was about to make a move, he heard footsteps crunching on snow from afar. He quickly dove into the pile of snow not too far away to hide himself. Just a moment after he was fully concealed, he immediately saw two figures appearing before him. They were both female, and from their backs, it was difficult to gauge their age. Nevertheless, from their revealed skin, it was apparent that they were not too young. They are strong. Even though the two of them were not intentionally showcasing their strength, Zhong Xian could still feel imposing might harnessed within their bodies. This was especially so for the lady standing on the left. Her strength could not compete directly with the first elder of the Zhong clan, but at the very least, she was around Zhong Wuchen's level, which meant that she was an expert who had surpassed Saint Nine Dan. Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up. Could she be the first elder of the Glacier Plain Court? He had intended to find Zhao Ya discreetly without anyone noticing, but he had ended up meeting this fellow first. If she truly was the first elder, he would be in deep trouble if he was noticed by her. At the very least, he did not wield the power to oppose her yet. How is it? What did she say? While Zhong Xian's mind was still wandering, he suddenly heard the first elder speaking in a hushed voice. She isn't giving in yet, the other figure replied. The first elder harumphed coldly. Humph, she has no choice in this matter. It is because I was too lenient the previous time around that her mother managed to get away. It won't happen again. But, if she doesn't cave in, we can't just continue keeping her imprisoned like this either, the other figure said. Don't worry, I have my own ways. For the time being, we should first lock her up for 2 days and make her suffer a bit. The first elder waved her hand and said, Right, doesn't she have a teacher? It seems like she does respect him quite a bit. Try to find a way to capture him here and use him as a hostage to force her to comply. Her teacher? You mean Zhongxian? But he's the benefactor of our Glacier Plain court. What about that? You also know how important this matter is. As long as we succeed, the Glacier Plain court will be able to be brought to a whole new level. I won't allow anyone to stand in the way at this point in time. The first elder flung her hand backward majestically. Hidden in the snow, Zhongxian's face darkened upon hearing those words. They intend to capture me? The fluctuations in Zhongxian's emotions swiftly caught the first elder's attention. She immediately turned her head around and stared intently at the pile of snow where Zhongxian was hiding in. Who is it? Chapter 1495 Teacher, I miss you what? Under the first elder's gaze, Zhongxian's primordial spirit stiffened. He quickly curled up and drove his soul depth to enter the state of heart of tranquil water, concealing every last hint of emotion and aura he was emanating. Despite the massive size of his primordial spirit, after cultivating the Heaven's Path divine art and undergoing the tempering of multiple lightning ordeals, it had already grown as wholesome as a crystal. As long as he did not intentionally release any trace of himself, it would be difficult for Saint Nindan cultivators or even experts stronger than that to notice his presence. What's wrong, First Elder? Surprised by the abrupt actions of the First Elder, the other figure quickly turned her head around to examine the surroundings as well. With her keen eyes, the First Elder examined the pile of snow closely and even scanned the area using her spiritual perception, but in the end, she could not find anything at all. Thus, she could only rub her glabella and say, It's nothing much. It might be due to my lack of sleep recently that I've gotten a little too sensitive. She was certain that she had felt some fluctuations in the surroundings earlier, but when she tried to check it, the presence had vanished altogether. However, she did not think that there was anyone in this world who was capable of escaping her detection, so since she was unable to find anything, it could very well just have been her imagination. Seeing that the First Elder had not found anything, the other party replied with a chuckle, while the security of the Glacier Plain Court can't be compared to that of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, it still isn't a place that just anyone can enter. First Elder, you need not think too much about it. The First Elder nodded slowly before continuing to advance toward the chanting Serenity Hall. She really is the First Elder. When the duo was finally some distance away, Zhongxian rose from the pile of snow and gazed at the two distant figures with narrowed eyes. From their conversation, it seemed like they were trying to force Zhao Ya to do something, but she was unwilling to carry it out, thus resulting in a conflict. Given Zhao Ya's personality, if she's willing to go so far as to oppose the First Elder, the matter that they want her to carry out is probably nothing good. To think that the Glacier Plain Court, one of the top powers of the Master Teacher continent, would actually stoop so low as to coerce its own young court chief into doing something that she was unwilling to do. Not only so, they actually had no qualms about holding him hostage so as to threaten her. Were they not being a little too despicable? Let me head over and take a look, Zhongxian thought as he proceeded forward silently. Very soon, the gates of the chanting Serenity Hall came into Zhongxian's sight. He saw the First Elder and the other figure walk up to the gates, and the First Elder tapped her finger lightly in the air. A token materialized right in front of her, and following which, a rift swiftly opened up in the formation, creating a passageway for them to pass through. The duo made their way through the rift, and as soon as they stepped in, it started closing. Alarmed, Zhongxian hurriedly rushed forward, and fortunately, before the rift could fully close, he managed to slip in. As soon as he entered, he abruptly felt his connection with the external world being severed, as if he had entered a folded space. It was actually a decoy. Zhongxian narrowed his eyes in astonishment. He had thought that the chanting Serenity Hall was just a building with a powerful defensive formation around it, but who could have thought that the formation was actually just a distraction? Even if he had breached the defensive formation, he still would not have found anything in it at all. Rather, the true chanting serenity hall was located in a folded space. Furthermore, this folded space was extremely stable, similar to the place where he had discovered the Dongshu gourd back then. Even if he used his eye of insight, if he did not know the exact location of the folded space beforehand, it would have been nigh impossible for him to find it. Calming his astonishment, Zhongxian swiftly assessed his surroundings. The folded space that he had entered was not too big. In essence, it was actually not much different from entering a larger room. Were it not for the fact that he had comprehended the three-dan heavenly art of dimension unravel, he would have thought that he had walked through a doorway into a building instead of being transported into another dimension. While scanning his surroundings, he slowly advanced forward. As he was within a folded space, he dared not make any big movements for fear that it would cause a spatial disturbance. Otherwise, once the first elder noticed his presence, he would not be able to escape. As such, it took him 5 whole minutes just to advance 10 meters. As soon as he arrived by the doorway to the main hall, he could hear the infuriated voice of the first elder. I have told you many times, this is the only way to fully awaken the pure yin body. Why are you so obstinate about this? A bell-like voice yelled back, there's no way I'll do it. Even if I'll never awaken my pure yin body, I still won't do it. Hearing the bell-like voice, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. I'm really at the right place. He could tell that the owner of the voice was none other than Zhao Ya. Even though it had been half a year since they had last met, her voice was still fresh in his mind. There was no way that he would recognize it incorrectly. Zhongxian sneaked in the main hall and carefully moved behind a particularly thick pillar before warily taking a glance forward. He saw Zhao Ya sitting on the ground. Unlike what he had expected, there were no shackles on her body. It seems like Elder Bai isn't aware of the exact situation either. Previously, Elder Bai had said that she was bound by the heaven sealing lock, but that was nowhere to be seen at all. Perhaps, there might be some error in the information that she had received. I'll give you some time to think it through. However, you should know that I have already failed once, and I'll never allow it to occur again. You may refuse if you want to, but I have plenty of ways to change your mind. I would prefer it to not come to that, but if you push me, I will have no choice, the first elder said as she flung her sleeve. There's no need for that. Give me all the time you want, and I'll still make the same choice. Zhao Ya replied obstinately. Very well. Let me see how long you can hold out for then. Harumphing coldly in anger, the first elder turned around and stomped away. The other elder in the main hall glanced at the departing first elder and shook her head. You are also well aware of the first elder's temperament, so why do you still choose to go head-on against her? Second elder, you need not say anything else. There's no way I'll compromise on this matter, Zhao Ya said resolutely. Since she's able to awaken your unique constitution, naturally, she wields the ability to destroy it too. That person is an example of that. Are you really going to walk down the same path as her? The second elder exclaimed anxiously. Even if I am crippled, I will have no regrets at all. Zhao Ya replied with an air of valiance. This was simply how she was. Once she had set her mind on something, no amount of persuasion would make her change her decision. In fact, thinking back on it, it was precisely due to that attitude of hers that initiated the series of events that eventually led to her becoming Zhongxian's student. Geez, you. Forget it. Just give the matter some good thought, all right? Seeing how adamant the young lady was on her stance, the second elder shook her head before heading out. Seeing that the two elders were walking over, Zhongxian quickly went into the wall and remained completely motionless, not even daring to look at all. Experts of the first elder's caliber possessed a keen sensitivity that allowed them to perceive the presence of others just by sheer instinct. Even if he remained perfectly calm, the first elder might still be able to sense his gaze. Just as Zhongxian had managed to seal his aura completely, the first elder arrived before the pillar, which he was hidden in, and shot a perplexed look at it. First elder, the second elder called out from behind. The first elder shook her head and said, It's nothing. It's just that I have been getting a rather weird vibe today, as if someone is following me. Following you? How could that be? Even that Zhong Wuheng wouldn't be able to follow you without getting notice. The second elder chuckled away the first elder's concerns. That's true. The first elder nodded. Still feeling a little uneasy from the feeling that she had been getting, she instructed, just to be safe, I want you to help me conduct a quick survey of the surrounding area. If you were to notice anything, report to me immediately. The intuition of an expert of her caliber was rarely wrong. Since she had felt something had to be going on. Perhaps, someone might really be observing every single one of their actions. Very well. Understanding her concern, the second elder nodded lightly before the two of them left together. Returning to the entrance, they took out their tokens and swiped them lightly. The next moment, they vanished from the spot. Seeing that the two of them had left, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. As he slipped out from the pillar that he was hidden in, he saw Zhao Huaiyi staring dazedly at a book in front of her. Soft whispers escaped from her mouth. Teacher, I really miss you. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.